Live from Liverpool, we need to talk about ghosts with Kevin Eustace.
Yes, it's Sunday. It's time for the Sunday sermon. My voice may go, and once again, I'm afflicted with some sort of illness. I'm sick of this. Maybe I'm just not built for winter weather, which is strange because I hate the heat. So what am I meant to do? Live in spring and autumn eternally? That would be effing amazing. If I become a multi-millionaire, then I'm just going to travel the world in places which are perennially in autumn or spring. I think that's what I'll do. What a great idea, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. How are you guys all doing? I hope that you're all doing wonderfully, wonderfully well. Do we have a treat for you today? Sorry, I'm full of things. My voice might go. It's been going if I talk for more than 5 minutes. So I might have to do this in 5-minute intervals. Yes. How exciting for everyone. So what we're going to do today is we have got a mammoth show. A mammoth, and I'm talking like an extinct hairy elephant with tusks type of show. It's a mammoth sort of show. Brilliant, because I spoke to two wonderful ladies over the last week. Two Americans. Hey, that's my cab. Give me my cab. Where's my hot dog? I want to see the ball game. Sorry, Americans, that's a bloody awful accent. And I'm sure you don't all watch baseball and eat hot dogs or get in cabs. Anyway, what we're going to do is play these two wonderful conversations that I had. It's going to be a big bumper show, this. It's going to come in close to around 2 hours, which is epic. I think it's going to be the longest show that we've ever done, which is fantastic. Now, what's interesting about that is, if he says so himself, normally when you listen to, I know I'm not one for big, long podcasts, but I know that a lot of people are, and that's why we're trying to mix it up. Some shows will be shorter, some will be longer, and it's just all the fun of the fair, isn't it, really? But what's really interesting about these two particular calls is there is so much paranormal experience going on within these two calls. It's wonderful. Like loads of brilliantly told stories by the two ladies involved. And yeah, it's just a really good listen. And I know because I've spent effing hours editing the bugger. But it was a worthwhile series of work. It really was. Anyway, I do hope that you're all fantastically well. Don't forget, if you want to help the show stay afloat, which is more and more important these days, of course, what with things like life, then do go over to our Patreon page, www. I don't have to say that anymore, do I? Everybody knows it's the World Wide Web. No one's putting WHW, are they? Well, it's the World Interweb Web. Yes. No, so we all know the starting address for the World Wide Web. Yeah? I can't believe I'm even saying this. Everybody knows what WWW stands for. Winter Wallaburger Wally. Yes. So go to the internet. Put into your search engine. Fucking hell, Kevin, people aren't stupid. Right, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to simplify this. Patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. Go to that website address and sign up to become a Patreon. Not only do you support the show, which is very important, you also get loads of extra stuff. We put out normally 2 shows a week, which are just extra bits. They can be spooky. They can be just me and Becca going for a walk, which is what today's Patreon special is, because this is a 2-hour-long paranormal show. So I think for the Patreons, it's going to be a little bit of a, if I just go on about ghosts again, you'll be a bit like, fucking hell, I've had my fill of paranormality. So instead, what I thought would be interesting, and I appreciate this might not be for everyone, me and Becca go on a walk around Liverpool to try and find a very important plaque. Yes, it's a plaque which states the involvement of Liverpool, or this particular area of Liverpool, in the American Civil War, because this particular area used to, unbelievably, throw fundraising balls for the Deep South. Just bizarre. I can't even get my head around it. Anyway, that's what we've done. So that's what you can listen to if you go over to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. And there's about 100 odd other shows there. Some on ghosts, some not. It's just a load of interesting, not interesting, to be honest, but it's sometimes a very good laugh. And it's well worth it, I think. So, do that, yes, like these wonderful people have, who've just signed up to our Patreon. And of course, when you do sign up to Patreon, you get a song to say thank you, as well as all that extra content. So we've had some wonderful people sign up, and I'm going to say thank you to them now. The electric guitar's out. Ooh, what a change-up. And we have 3 wonderful new patrons to say hello to today. And thank you to, of course, we have Liz and Olivia Emmons. They might be sisters or mother and daughter. Who do I know? What do I know? And Larissa McLean. So, for you 3, this is for you. Yeah. Liz and Olivia Emmons, you signed up to Patreon with love Rissa McLean, and you're keeping all the lights on. Oh, I want to say thank you. You're keeping the lights on too. And you're making sure that I can talk about ghosts forever. Forever and a day. Hold on. And it's on a 7th. Thank you to you wonderful people. I won't talk about ghosts forever and a day, because that would make me immortal, yes, like a vampire. Maybe I will. Oh, sorry, I always struggle to put the guitar down, don't I? It's like I'm addicted to it. No, it's like I don't have a stand, is what it's like. But thank you to you wonderful people. As I say, go over to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts, and you can get all that wonderful content. I couldn't think of the word. Content, yes. And a song, of course. And of course, this week we were also going to have part 2 of the story of the man who drove to Cornwall, our anonymous friend, yes. Well, that won't be in this show. That's going to be in next week's show when we do a few more written stories. Okay. Anyway, we need to get down to some serious spook today. I meant to keep this part short, but I do have verbal diarrhea as one of my many ailments. So we'll keep this part short because we have lots of spook to cover. Yes, we do. Don't forget, if you want to come on the show and you want to talk to me, yeah, because I'm Paul McCartney. Oh, nearly had a Paul McCartney ghost flashback there. If you want to come and talk to me, or Paul McCartney, then send me an email to contact@talkaboutghosts.com and I will speak to you and we'll get you on the show. And that said, if you want to send in your story typed or written, send it to the same address, contact@talkaboutghosts.com, and we will read them out. Yeah, because that's how the show works. Yeah, it's very much a two-way street. Yeah, business speak, man. Anyway, shall we get to it? Shall we get spooked together? I think we shall. Let's get to the main gist of the programme. Okay, so it's my favourite time of the week where I get to sit down, normally late at night when we have to do these transcontinental type of calls, and we're going to speak all things ghostly and spooky with the wonderful Alicia over in LA. Hello, Alicia.
Hello.
Thank you very much for offering to come on the show. Your email surprised me and scared me because it just said in one simple sentence, I have experiences with everything from doppelgangers to demons. And not many people can quote that.
I like how I said that. I forgot I said that, actually. It's very alliterative of me, doppelgangers and demons. Yeah, so usually it basically starts from when I was born. So that's usually kind of where I start, because it is my personal ghost story, but I don't remember it at first because I was very, very small. But these are the stories that my parents told me about what happened, and I was the main focus of them usually. Yeah. And I just thought it was always really interesting, and I guess I'll just get into it because you'll see why towards the middle of it there.
Please do.
So when I was born, I was the first grandchild for my father's mother.
Yeah.
And my father's side of the family is very Irish, like with all the superstitions and stuff that follow it. So, they believe in the fae folk and all that. And my grandmother, which in hindsight, because she has passed now, I kind of wish I would have talked with her more about it when I had the chance, because it never really came up in conversation when I was directly with her. But I feel like we talk about it all the time, with my cousins and like my parents and all that.
Yeah.
But she had a imaginary friend who was with her entire life. So after a while, we stopped calling him imaginary friend and he became her ghost friend.
Yeah.
And his name was Red. And I guess when I was born, he was super excited. Like first grandchild, he was really into it. To the point that he would pay us visits and stay for extended periods of time and just basically torment my mother mostly.
Oh my God.
Not necessarily in a bad way, but she would just get really freaked out. So like the house that we were living in at that time was also it's pretty creepy. And this is another full circle thing I'll see later on.
Right.
But we basically lived in the basement of this house, and half of it was finished poorly by like my father and his brothers when they were teens. They like basically just threw up some walls.
Yeah.
And then the other half was your typical super creepy basement, like spiders everywhere, dark corners,
Yeah.
creepy. Very much like a horror movie basement. So basically we lived in that basement, and for a while I was lucky enough, not even in, my memory though, I was lucky enough to have a bedroom upstairs. So my crib and all of my nursery stuff was upstairs in a room and not down in the creepy basement.
Yeah.
So the first thing my mom would start noticing is she was very often home alone late into the night because my father and my grandfather, who we lived with, worked factory work, so they worked pretty late.
Yeah.
So my mom would put me to bed. She would wander downstairs to either lay in bed or watch TV or whatever. And she would notice often, this happened to her multiple times, that it would sound like someone was walking up the creepy, scary basement stairs. Her first instinct was, like the first time it happened was, oh God, someone broke into the house, because in our basement, we actually had a sliding glass door because the house was built on a hill. So it would go to the outside. So she thought someone came in and they're going to go.
So like a patio door sort of thing onto the outside?
Yeah. A sliding glass door that opened up basically underneath a big porch that we had all along the back of the house.
Right.
So it would open up right to there, and the backyard and like basically our neighborhood in general is right smack in the middle of like a nature reserve.
Oh, wow.
So to the back, it was like trees and trees and trees and trees. And then like way far out in the distance, there was like a horse farm. And there was like a cool creek. It was really fun when I was little, but it was also very creepy at night.
I bet, yeah. Bloody hell.
So, yeah. So she thought someone came in, was going up the stairs, like heavy footed going up these creaky stairs. And I'm alone up there, I'm a little baby, I'm asleep. And so she gets a bat, as one does when you're a lone female at night and you hear a noise. You get a bat, and she runs upstairs like, I'm gonna smack someone in the head because they're gonna get my baby.
Yeah.
And she stops at the top of the stairs. There's no one there, but she can see, I had one of those little lights in my room that did like stars.
Oh yeah.
She sees my lights, and then she hears that a bunch of my toys are going off. And she's like, and I'm a small baby, like not standing yet baby. So she goes into my room, and every single toy in my room is going off by itself.
Wow.
And she is immediately like, oh no, and knows that it's got to be red. So she calls my grandmother. It's like midnight. She calls my grandmother. She's like, tell your ghost to come home. Not welcome here.
Amazing.
And so that was the less, like, that was just kind of funny, honestly. Like,
I mean, that's funny but terrifying. If your mother thinks that there's somebody trying to steal you.
Yeah.
Can I ask, where did we? I don't think we discussed it yet, but where's the nickname Red? Or do you come on to that?
It will come to.
Okay,
that.
amazing.
That
Fantastic.
makes the full one of the.
Oh, amazing! I love it. Go
on. So he does that sort of stuff, like little parlor tricks like that, and my mom is freaked out the entire time. And then it kind of culminated with one night. It's basically like the first winter of my my infanthood. Like, I was born in June, and this is the first winter.
I see.
Where we lived at that time in Illinois is where we're from.
Yeah.
You get heavy snow. Might as well be the freaking Arctic at some point. And so we had just got a blizzard.
Right.
My dad and my grandfather, and this is the middle of the day, but they're both working.
Yeah.
My mom's at home. She's cleaning the house. She has put me on the middle of the bed and made like a pillow ledge around me so I wouldn't roll off. I'm still little, and I could still just roll off the bed if I felt like it. She's cleaning the house. She comes back to check on me, and I am gone.
What?
I am just missing from the bed. So first off, she's like, oh my God, the baby rolled off the bed. Like, throwing the pillows, looking under the bed.
Check the floor immediately, sort of thing.
Can't find me.
Yeah.
I am gone. So her second instinct is, well, someone took the freaking baby.
Yeah.
And so she goes to run outside. She calls around the house. Did anyone come home? Do you have the baby? No one's there. Runs outside, looks around. There's no footprints in the snow. runs around the house, no footprints in the snow except her own, comes back in, and I'm still gone. Now, I don't know why her first instinct wasn't like, call the cops. Her first instinct was, let's call her dad and get him here because maybe I'm just going insane.
Yeah.
And the baby's like somewhere. So my dad speeds home in a blizzard, comes in the house, and basically they do the whole circulation again. Like, is she under the bed? Where is she? My dad
a second pair of eyes sort of thing.
Yes. Literally upends the bed. The bed is like sitting crooked off of the thing. They can't find me. He does a circle around the house. Only his footprints. My mom's are covered up by now. And they're like, someone took the baby. So he's like, we got to call the cops. She's gone. We got to get a missing persons report going or something. Has the phone, goes to walk into the bedroom. And before the phone even connects, as they walk into the bedroom, they find me sitting on the upended bed laughing.
Freaking hell. Well, then everybody's first question is, and why? What are you laughing at, little child?
Who knows? And when I was little, like, I was super into fairies and stuff. And I was like, am I a changeling? Like, did they take me and replace me with a fairy? I'm like, where are my fairy powers? I got gypped. But I was gone for like almost 2 hours.
Oh my God. And you couldn't walk at this point, obviously.
No, I was a small infant. The best I could do was to roll off the bed, which I obviously didn't do because they would have noticed. They would have found me. Yeah,
it's also, I mean, it's, you know, if you're looking at it like, I mean, that is clearly weird and arguably very supernatural. But then the second point would be, it's not like it's been done for a protection thing because you were safe. So it's not like if you were dead and, you know, I disappeared, then the ceiling came in, landed where it was, and then I appeared somewhere else. You could say, okay, that's like a protective spirit. But that's clearly just a prank.
Yeah, he was a jokester and he liked to hang out with me.
Wow.
So the theory again was, Red took her somewhere, wherever weird ghosts take babies. And they called my grandmother and like, come get your freaking ghost.
That's really funny. That just tickles me.
It is pretty funny. Just come get your ghost. He's causing nonsense. So I don't think anything as intense as that happened to me after that. I think maybe a couple of times they got like the toys going off thing, or I would like, you know, talk at the wall as children do.
Yeah. Oh, well, your nan clearly took a ghost back home. You see, that's what seems to have happened.
She'd come take him, and then every once in a while he might wander back, or maybe we'd visit, and he'd be like, "Oh, well, it's time to go visit her again." And
I've got this hysterical scene in my head where your nan sat there going, "What did you do this time?" And Red's going like, "I stole the baby. I stole the baby." Be like, "Oh, Red."
Really, really, and as far as we know, like, she saw him mostly like any other person. Like, he would come and go. She'd be like, "Oh, he's doing something else." Wow. And would like full on talk to him and stuff. It was weird. Like, we were all like, that's real weird. So the final story I have about Red is the one that kind of brings it all first full circle and makes you really think.
Go on. I'm can I just say, I think I and all the listeners right now, we're on tenterhooks now. So
yes.
Deliver the goods, Alicia. No pressure.
Yes.
Deliver the goods.
So my mom seems to be the focal point here, which I guess makes sense because she was the one who was with me the most. So he probably was like, she's fun to play around with. I would just trick her a lot. So my family went to a big family reunion, and it was down in Tennessee, which is below us.
Yeah.
And my like great aunt had just bought like one of these big old houses, like, you know, surrounded by trees and forest and really cool. But stereotypically they renovated the attic to be like a living space, and it had one of those big old beautiful bay windows with the seats you could sit in.
Wow.
And they're like, oh, well, it's almost renovated, so we'll put a bunch of people up there on air mattresses and have them sleep there for this family reunion. So my mom and my dad are sleeping on an air mattress, and it's middle of the night. My mom wakes up. She goes to roll over, and she notices my dad is just sitting in the bay window, looking out the window. And she's like, hey, my dad's name's Dwayne. She's like, hey, Dwayne. And he looks at her, and she's like, come to bed. It's the middle of the night. And he just goes, like, kind of does a little shrug and then looks back out the window. And she's like, okay, just ignore me then, like, rude. And rolls over and realizes my dad is laying right next to her.
What on earth?
Yes. So she immediately goes, oh, and like looks back towards the window and there's no one there.
Wow.
So the next morning she gets up and she finds my grandmother and she's like, hey, we gotta talk. And she's like, okay. And she's like, what does Red look like? And my grandmother's like, it's the funniest thing. He looks exactly like Dwayne.
I knew you were going to say that then. No way.
So she's like, that's why I call him Red, because they both have red hair.
Oh my God.
And so when they're telling me this, when I'm older, and like, I'm just like, wait, so this ghost looked exactly like my dad? And I'm like, I have a lot of memories from when I was really young, like in like 2 and 3. And the thing that creeps me out is thinking, what memories do I have of my dad that might actually have been Red?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So obviously I was never scared of him. That's just my dad.
And that explains you laughing on the bed.
Yeah. Having a good time. I was just hanging out with my dad in my little brain, I guess. So that brings the whole doppelganger thing in. He was basically a spinning image of my dad. And it's like, well, who was he? He's probably got to be some kind of ancestor or something. Yeah. Like there's family resemblance, but so I guess he was just like our family's spirit or something.
Wow. That is such a good tale. And just to confirm, in terms of Red, is that kind of the end of Red's tale wise?
That is kind of the end of Red's tale. I think my grandmother continued to see him, but like, at least to my knowledge, I don't think I've ever seen him like in my adult life or in the time that I could actually remember or hopefully identify something that would distinguish him from my father and a ghost.
Yeah, I mean, just to ask a question which seems rather pertinent, and forgive me if anyone's thinking, God, why have you just asked that? I don't mean this in any way other than a completely intrigued about the story sort of ways, and I don't know the right way to say it because I'm full of cold. So I will just ask it, and believe me, there's no intent here, but or any sort of meaning to cause any bad feeling or memory. But did he have a younger brother who died, or an elder brother who died, or something? Did your nan have another child? Maybe no.
Not that I am aware of. No one ever brought that up. And like I've talked about this with my dad before because he was like, he was part of it too. And he was always like, yeah, it was so weird. And like that never came up. But it seems like, the idea of like maybe there was a twin and.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say that, and that's what I mean. That's what it's a weird thing to ask. So, your nan, who I've only just heard about now, can I ask? Did she have a twin that died, for example? It's how you bring that up mid conversation isn't. Yeah, really...
I don't think she did at all. And then Red was with her since she was a child.
Oh my God!
Like he started out essentially as an imaginary friend.
Right, you said that at the start, of course you did. Yeah. And so, can I ask? So, when you say like your mum would ring your nan and say, will you come and get your ghost, sort of thing. At that point, was your nan still talking to him? Yeah. Wow.
I don't really know exactly how their relationship fully worked, but she would refer to him like he was any other person. She'd be like, oh, the other day, Red, blah, blah.
And would people say to her, nan, you're talking about a ghost? And did she know he was a ghost, for example?
I think she knew. I mean, he was there the whole time. There comes a certain point where when you get older, you realize, it's not normal for me to have an imaginary friend. So this guy might be something else. But I don't know. My dad's side of the family is admittedly pretty weird. So it just wasn't super, super, no one thought it was super weird.
Yeah.
They're always like, oh yeah, ghosts. They're a thing.
I get that. I mean, I've mentioned that on the show before, but my cousin Liz, she had, I can't remember the guy's name, but she had an invisible friend that literally, like, people had to make meals for and stuff, and she'd say he gets angry if you don't put a plate of food in front of him. He went away in the end. And even now, her elder brother, my other cousin, obviously, still rips the back out of her and says, I remember when you had this invisible friend, and like, oh, is he round now? And she just like laughs it off. And because I very rarely see her, I haven't sat down with her at any point and say, you need to tell me more about this.
Right. It's sometimes you're just like, all right, that's the thing. But yeah, he wasn't ever like demanding like that. Like, oh, he has to have a spot at the table.
Yeah.
He was just kind of a fixture that she had.
Wow, how interesting is that? So I'm going to pick you up on your email now. So we seem to have ticked off doppelganger there. But there was another D word in that email which tickled my paranormal fancy somewhat, and that is the one that is spelt like lemon, but remove the L and add a D.
Yes, the demons. They're interesting. So the demon ones were kind of random. They were never like in my house or anything. But as I've grown older, and I don't know if it's the fact that I live in LA and like all the kind of weird things and spiritual things are pretty accepted out here as opposed to Illinois. But like I never really thought about the fact that I can like see ghosts, but I do. I definitely see ghosts.
Wow.
Because they always kind of show up throughout my life, or like in conjunction with a friend who also kind of sees ghosts. Then it usually gets a little crazier. So I have some interesting stories about me and my friends coming together and ghosts coming, but the demons were always just super random, but you could just kind of tell they were a demon. Like if you had like a textbook picture of a demon or like a creepy spirit that people would classify as demon, these guys always fell into it.
Yeah.
And so when I was little, I was after the stint in the creepy basement house that had the scary shadows and ghosts and stuff.
Yeah.
Then I would just kind of see random things. And when I was raised Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
And in that religion, there aren't ghosts. There are only demons or angels.
Right.
So it's either that is an angel, or if it's not an angel, it's a demon, and everyone be scared and don't pay it any attention. So that's kind of how I was raised when I was little. And so if I saw something, I would be like, no, absolutely not. I'm not looking at you. I'm not paying any attention to you. I'm just going about my business.
Yeah.
And then when I got a little bit older and I realized I did not like that religion at all, I started reevaluating, my beliefs and stuff. And I was like, well, I can't deny that these things show up every once in a while. So I guess maybe I'll explore it a little bit more. And around that time, so I'll tell you the demon ones, but then I'll have to backtrack a little bit. So
yeah, however you want to do it.
Okay. So we were going to the movies, and it was in the next biggest town over, which was like an hour away. And we're on our way back, and I start to notice something out of the corner of the front windshield on the driver's side. And it looks like just something kind of coming into view and going out of view, sort of like flapping. So as I'm watching it, I'm noticing that it basically looks like a big bat wing.
Yeah.
Which is creepy. So I'm staring at it for a long time, trying to figure out what it is and kind of like debunk it. Like, is it the power lines? Is it the light poles? Am I seeing anything else? But after a while, I come to the conclusion that I can't figure out any logical reason that there is a giant bat wing there. Like where we are, there isn't even really any trees. It's all just cornfield. It's flat.
Right.
So after a while, I am like, guys, do you see that? And because there is my best friend in the front seat and her boyfriend in the back. And they're like, what? And like the most frustrating thing happened. Every time I would try to point it out to them, I don't know if you've ever like seen a bird, the way it like moves its body when it goes to like raise up into the air.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of open it and the gust carries them up. This thing would do that. So it would go above the car where you couldn't see the wing kind of tipping into the corner.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, never mind. I don't see it again now. It just lifted up into the air.
Right.
And after a little bit, it came back into view and I was like, there it is. And it would do the same thing. And I was like, okay, never mind. I guess I'm crazy.
Right.
But to this day, I am entirely certain that I saw like a giant bat-like demon thing,
Wow.
just the tip of its wing. Because I can't explain it. There's nothing in Illinois that looks like that. I mean, we have hawks, we have bats, but they're like this. They're like tiny.
Yeah.
So
can I just
categorize?
Sorry, I just need to jump in here, and just to give you some real time thing on what I'm currently on what's going on here, right? So you'll know, as I know, we've just been. This is I've stitched this episode together from a conversation we've just had, and now we've started recording again.
Yeah,
and that's fine. But this will all make the show. This is fine. Now it's just when you started to talk about demons, right? That you started freezing, it started going crackly, and I said I'm going to have to pause and download what I've done, and we'll start again.
Yeah,
and we started it again, and there's when you started talking, it's hopefully being picked up on the recording. There was like a low rumble, like a really, really like slow to loud, as we were both talking.
We have planes.
Oh, okay. Well, that could be that. Okay, now there's two other things that then took place, which sent a shiver down my spine, and I've just literally, as you continue talking, I've been shitting myself, for want of a better phrase, and that's because what's over your right shoulder? What's darkness behind you? Yeah.
Are you seeing like that?
It looks like I'm looking into a room, like where just above your. Is it a mirror?
It's my kitchen.
That's your kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there something spooky back there?
Yeah, because I thought you had someone with you standing there.
Nice.
Seriously, see where that's now like lit up at the back. I know people can't see this, but like where there's like it looks like there's maybe something off a window shining onto a wall or a cupboard. They're just direct behind you. There, you won't be able to see it really where I'm pointing.
Right.
Anyway, just to over your right shoulder and there where you're behind your hand now. See where there's that light on the just next to your finger against a cupboard, exactly there.
Yeah, it's on the fridge.
Right. Okay. Well, that was blocked out.
All right.
While you were talking, and then the cat that's on the couch raised her head, and I caught out the corner of my eye, and it made me jump. And then I got really scared and thought, when you finish this little bit about the bat, I'm gonna have to tell you that I'm freaking out. But anyway, all right. Just thought to share that with you.
No,
that there's no one in your kitchen.
I would. Oh, I'm not freaked out. It's fine. I don't get freaked out. I don't get freaked out very easily, thankfully, or else I feel like I'd constantly be like, ah.
Well, I'm gonna freak out. I'm just gonna have to look at you now, and I'm not gonna be staring at that.
Don't pay attention to the darkness.
Paying attention to the darkness behind you now.
Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't my husband. He went in the other room, so he'd be quiet.
Okay, I'm sure it was probably just a trick of the light. Trick of the light. Combined with a naughty neighbour's cat, and it just sent me off on one. So, so anyway, so that was your first demon experience, was it?
Yeah, that's probably the first one I would categorize as a demon because it was definitely not human. Because I don't know many humans with giant bat wings that fly outside your car.
Fair enough.
I thought it was kind of creepy to me because when I was little, one of the few scary movies that scared me was Jeepers Creepers for some reason. That dude in his face, I'm just like, stop with that face. He'd do like the weird smile and like heavy breathing, and I'd be like, stop it.
Yeah.
But he had those bat wings, and that's the first thing I thought of because in the background of that movie, it's all cornfields and junk too, and I'm like, ugh. This better not be the 7 years or whatever that Jeepers Creepers comes out to feed. I'm not being part of any of that. Amazing. No, thank you. So that happened. My friend thought I was insane. And I went ahead and was like, all right, well, then I'm going to ignore that. And I'll just look out this window. That was it. I don't know where that guy was flying to or what he was up to, but he was there.
Wow. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And that was probably like the creepier ones I've seen. I'm kind of glad I was in a car with other people and not by myself because I would have been like, whoa.
Yeah, definitely.
The other demon dude I saw takes a little more explanation about like the area that I lived. So think about it as like a big square, and on the left side of the square is my neighborhood. And on the right side of the square is my best friend's neighborhood. And then in between us is a big plot of land that had like a little pond on it. And we used that as like a fairgrounds. Like there was always like tractor pulls, and in July, they would come set up rides for the fair.
Yeah.
And, or have like a carnival or whatever. And then, basically surrounding us on the bottom of the square is like cornfields. And so there is a road that goes from my neighborhood behind the fairgrounds, and then it comes up on the side and goes into my friend's neighborhood, and there's a big cornfield right there.
Yeah.
So there was this the road we would take. I take it almost every day because I'd be going from my house to my friend's house. And this time my mom is driving me and my friend from our house to her house, and we go along that cornfield, and it is towards the end of the day, like the sun's starting to set, and I'm looking out the window again, and the corn had just all been cut down, so the fields were open. So we're coming around the bend, and we get the first side of the cornfield, and there is a guy, and he is in the cornfield, and he is bent down like he's checking the soil.
Yeah.
And as I come around the corner and I see him, he looks up. So he goes from looking down, he looks up, and we make eye contact.
Right.
And I kind of freeze. And what he does is he just does a quick turn and like stands up and then turns to face me with like both arms down at his side.
Oh.
And as we make like full contact, like I know he's seeing me, I realize that's not right. This guy is not right.
Yeah.
You can't really tell what's happening with his face. There aren't really eyes for me to be making eye contact with, but I know he's holding my gaze.
Yeah.
And he's wearing a long black trench coat, and he has like a hat, a black hat that has a kind of a wider brim. And it was unsettling because you could kind of tell like whatever he's dressed in is not appropriate for this time period.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And I turned away. And I visibly was like, oh no. And everyone in the car was like, what? And I'm like, no. And they're like, okay. I like refused to talk about him. I was like, no way. That guy was not right. He was not human.
It sounds like the hat that the guy off Poltergeist got. You know, the scrawny fella on Poltergeist where he's got the circular hat on.
I didn't even make that association, but yes.
Which I think's like an old timey Undertaker sort of thing. I think is what he's meant to be.
Almost a little bit like that. So I don't know if he was. I mean, I don't know what he was.
Yeah, but that's terrifying. The fact that what's he checking the soil for anyway? I mean, but it's more the fact that like he recognized that you were looking at him.
Yeah, that was the creepy part. Like, so like I'll say I see ghosts, and sometimes I see them so vividly that I don't know they're a ghost.
Right. You think they're a real person.
Yeah, like and then they'll walk into a wall, and I'll be like, oh no.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Like I've seen a fair amount of seemingly like homeless people do that. They'll be just walking down the street, and then they'll turn into an overpass and go right into the middle of the thing, and I'll be like, okay. Just that's kind of how I see them, and sometimes they'll just be like a shadow. Yeah.
When was the most recent? When was the last time that you seen one?
The most recent time I saw one, I kind of ended up getting in a fight with my boss about it because I work out of her home, and I was walking into her house, and like I can kind of tell if a place is haunted.
That's a real person, isn't it? That's just walked past you just to say.
That is my husband.
Right.
Do not freak out.
Jesus wept. Sorry. Go on.
So I can tell if a place is haunted by just like walking into the house. Like if I'm alone in the house, especially if it's at night, if you have a ghost, it's gonna like do something.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, you don't got a ghost. But that doesn't mean there can't be something like passing through.
Yeah.
So my boss's house does not have a ghost. She has 5 children, and all of them are like, "Oh, there's a ghost," and I'm like, "Dear children, no, there is not."
Yeah.
I'm like, and if there was, I would tell you. Please do not worry. They're like, whatever.
Hmm.
But my boss, she's very spiritual
Yeah.
in the idea that like she's like, I refuse to welcome anything negative in. Like, there will be no negativity. Don't even speak of negativity. So anyway, I walked into her house, and in front of me, so they have like an entryway and then their living room. And I saw someone sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
Quickly get up and like seemingly run into the kitchen. And immediately I was like, that's not one of her kids, and that's not like the housekeeper. And I walk in and there's no one in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, he's just creeping around. And then I kind of got a feeling of him. And then I didn't tell my boss about it because I didn't want her to get all annoyed and be like, oh, you're saying there's something bad in my house. I'm like, no, I said that something decided to creep into your house and they're doing whatever they're doing. And then I went to lunch a little bit later, and I saw the same little shadow dude creep on over to the neighbor's house. Like, he ran across.
What?
And
Really?
I was like, yeah. So I think he was traveling through just being nosy.
Wow.
And I told her about it, and we got in kind of a fight. And I'm like, I didn't say anything bad about it. I wasn't saying he was like a bad dude. He was just a nosy dude because he just was creeping around. And I'm like, and I figured if something creeped around in your house, you might want to know about it. She's like, so, but anyway, we kind of got in a fight about it. And I was like, well, fine. I'm not going to tell you if anything's creeping in your house.
From your experience then, what would that be? Like a transient thing that haunts that general street or neighborhood, or?
I don't know.
See, and that's the exactly. You know what? And you know what you've just said there is what I'll term an authenticator to the experiences that you're saying, because you're not trying to imply that you know what's going on. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I have no idea what's going on.
When I asked you that question, if you were trying to pardon the French, but if you were trying to bullshit, you would say at that point you'd say, well, it's a known fact that street, 1710, this happened. And when you're just saying, I don't know, I don't know why it's there. It's just telling you what was actually there. I'm just telling you what I see.
Yeah, they just kind of pop up, and half the time, like I don't even realize what it is until, like I said, it does something weird. This guy was just a little shadow dude, and it was the middle of the day, and I think I startled him when I came in, really, because he was like, oh no, there's someone in here, because there wasn't anyone in the house at that time. She was working at the guest house in the back where our office is. Yeah. And so he was like, oh no, someone's here, I better get out. And like not even their dogs were in the house at that time, so I was the only one who saw him.
What would you say is the scariest one that you've ever seen?
Oh God.
Putting you on the spot now. Putting you on the paranormal spot.
So let me backtrack a little bit, because this one, I didn't see him, but it was the scariest one.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like someone else's story that I ended up wandering into. And again, like I say, I feel like occasionally if I have a friend or someone who also has like an affinity, like ghosts like them, that's kind of what I say. Not that so much that we can see them, but like ghosts like them, so they hang out around. It usually gets, the activity might raise a little bit if there's both of us. I think this is what happened for her, and I'm like, I'm sorry, so sorry if I came in and made the ghost more active. So she was my best friend at the time, and we were 12, 13. And we'd just become really good friends, and she lived fairly in the same neighborhood as me. Like I could ride my bike to her house. Yeah. And so first time I went to her house, she's like, oh yeah, well, there's like totally a ghost here. And I was like, oh God, like, no, please don't be a ghost here. And she's like telling me about it. And she'd be like, oh yeah, so I'll hear like breathing at night and all this other creepy stuff you don't want to hear when you're getting ready to go stay at a friend's house for the first time. And like the only bathroom in the house, you had to go into her bedroom to get to the bathroom. And she would be like, oh yeah, the bathrooms, something's weird about the bathroom. And I'm like, great. So that's another thing I have to worry about. Like, I just want to be able to go in there and use the facilities and get out. I don't want to be
3
haunted.
in the morning.
Yeah. And so she would be like, oh, like there's this cabinet and the cabinet's really hard to close and open, but every night we close it and then every morning it's open. And I'm like, well, that's not a ghost. That's just like the wood settling. And I'm like, no way, I'm not going to get scared here. So then she's like, okay, well, that's fine. And like their bathroom was equal parts amazing and equal parts terrifying because they had a clawfoot tub, which is
very
like
nice.
cool, but also creepy.
Yeah.
Like this house had probably been there forever, like since our town had been created.
Okay. So it's a really old house.
Yeah, it was an old house. And so everything's like real wood and heavy. The doors are all heavy and stuff. But so that first night after she tells me all this creepy stuff about the bathroom, we're going to bed and, oh, where's the only place in the room that I can fit to sleep on the floor? Guess what? Right in front of that bathroom door.
Wow.
So I didn't sleep at all.
Yeah.
Didn't sleep at all. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to go ahead and I'm not going to stay the night here very often because I know it's just a matter of time before something creepy happens, and you can just stay at my house where there aren't any ghosts.
Yeah.
And so she kind of would get a little annoyed about that. Like, you never want to be at my house. And I'm like, well, you played it up really well. Like, like nothing had happened to me, but I knew it was a matter of time. So I would only ever go to her house like during the day. So you couldn't get me there at night. And the only exception to that was, like for her birthday once a year.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So this particular day we had been at the local swimming pool and we had just rode our bikes back to her house and we were going to like get changed and stuff and then go seek out food. And so we're both in her bathroom. She's like sitting on the toilet. I'm like in the mirror trying to brush out my hair. And we're alone. Her mom's at work and she had an older sister, but she had gone off to college. Oh, that was one of the things she told me too. Like, I used to think I hear this breathing at night and I used to think it was my sister because they shared a room. And she's like, but I still hear the breathing and she's gone to college. And I was like, no.
Amazing that she then kicks off at you and says, why don't you fancy staying in mine anymore? It's like, you
I'm like,
are putting the fear of God into me every time you talk.
Yeah, God, every time you open your mouth, you're like, something creepier happens. So we're in this bathroom and out of nowhere, her heavy, real wooden, super tall, like floor to ceiling door to the bathroom slams shut.
Wow.
Now, at the slamming of the shut of that door, I basically jumped and flipped and landed with my butt in the sink to stare at the door like against the wall.
Yeah.
And as we're both staring in terror at this door, because that was scary enough, we watch the lock on the inside of the bathroom. It was like a deadbolt lock.
Yeah.
Lock.
No way.
Yeah. And we're like, whoa! Like, no. And she also had one of those little swing hook locks.
Yeah.
That one I could deal with if that one locked by itself because you get enough momentum and those will swing. But so that locked and the deadbolt one locked.
Oh my God. And you are in the bathroom at this, in the bedroom at this point.
We're in the bathroom.
And in the bathroom,
and it just slammed the bathroom door on us and locked us in.
Locked you in. Right. Amazing. Terrifying.
From the inside. Yeah. So we're like, what? What do we like? We don't want to be in this bathroom. We're terrified. I'm still like up on the sink, like pressing myself against the mirror, like help. And so finally we're like, we got to get out of here. And we're like, okay, so like on 3, I'll get one lock, you get the other one. We'll fling that door open and we'll run. So somehow we get the courage to do that. She jumps up. We unlock the door at the same time. We fling it. We run. We dive onto her couch in the living room and we stare at the bedroom door that, leads to her bedroom and the bathroom. And we're just like there was a blanket on the couch and that thing was like wrapped around us. And we're just like staring at the doorway. So her sweet little dog decides at that time, she had like a little border collie, comes out of her mother's room, kind of looks at us like, what are you guys doing? And then continues to walk on her path towards basically the kitchen. On the way, she has to pass the bedroom door that we're staring at in terror. And the dog just stops dead in her tracks in the doorway, turns and looks in, and then like starts freaking out, growling.
Oh, God.
And then she's just like, we've never heard her make this noise ever.
Yeah.
Gets to the point she starts foaming at the mouth and then shaking, and she falls and ends up like having a seizure.
What?
Yeah. And so we're just like screaming our heads off because we're like, oh, the dog. And then like, she kind of came out of it a little bit later, and they ended up taking her to the vet, and that was like a start of a big long seizure problem for this dog.
Christ, and it had nothing before.
Nothing before. This was the first one right after we had this terrifying experience, and like she had such that visceral reaction, and we're like 12, so we're like, oh my god. And I'm like, dude, I'm never like, this is the middle of the day, like no time is safe. And I'm like, I can't be in your house alone. I'm not staying here at night. I'll do the one time a year, and the only time I would stay there for her birthday was because she would camp outside in a big tent.
Right, fair enough.
So that scared me so bad that year when her birthday did roll around, I like woke up in the middle of the night in the tent with her and like a bunch of other girls, and I had to pee so bad. And I was like, I gotta go into the house to that bathroom.
No way. I don't
and I'm
care.
Like,
I'd be squatting in a water bottle around the corner.
So I'm like standing in the yard in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. staring at the back door thinking like, do I do it? What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Moral of the story, like long story short, whatever, I basically ended up peeing myself instead of going in her house.
Fair enough. I'm completely in agreement with that decision.
Changed my pants and never talked about it. That's how scary her house was.
That is fantastic. Do we know any history of the house, anything like that?
No, but it's not actually the end of the story.
Go on.
Her story continued to the point, like one time I actually submitted it to be on one of those haunting shows. Because I was like, this sounds like a horror movie. So luckily for me, unluckily for her, her rest of her story continues without me being there, but we would just talk about it. So she would still hear the breathing. And one time when she heard the breathing, she was facing the wall and she heard it like it was right behind her, you know, terrifying. And she told me that when she rolled over, there was like a face.
Oh my God.
Like creepy white ghost face, and that she was just like, ah! You know,
yeah, obviously, yeah,
freaked out. And I was like, okay, that's terrifying, never come into your house again. Yep, for sure. And another time she was sitting there laying in bed, and it was wintertime, so she had it pulled all the way up to her nose and laying facing the ceiling, and her mom is in the bathroom of terror, and she's like brushing her teeth in the mirror, and they're talking with her mom looking at her through the mirror. And all of a sudden the blanket goes from her nose and just shoots down to her feet. And she's like laying there like stiff as a board in the bed, and her mom just turns around really slowly like, did that just happen?
So just being yanked off the bed? Just
the blanket just got yanked off the bed.
Wow.
Straight to her feet. Like it was in like a line, like a blind bunch on the ground.
Yeah.
She was all like, so that was fun. And then probably one of the creepier things that happened to her, which I was kind of part of this one, was her house. And this is our theory, me and her together. Our theory is that this series of events was also the ghost. Because the ghost just loved to mess around with her.
Yeah.
But she used to get these phone calls to her house, and this is pre-cell phone days. So we just had the landline. So she'd get the calls to the house, and her mom was always working. We were often alone as children, as
social services will never find out. But,
yes. So she gets the call, and there'd be a guy on the line, and he'd be like, "Hey, can I talk to your mom?" And she'd be like, "I'm sorry, my mom's in the shower right now. Can I take a message and I'll have her call you back?" She'd never say she was alone. Because we were taught, like, don't do that under any circumstances. Yeah. So they started out normal, but she would get it like every day, this guy calling. And finally one day she's like, "No, I'm sorry, she's not available right now. She's in the other room. She's busy. She's got her hands full. Can I take a message?" And the guy like snapped and was like, "I know your mom's not home. You're all alone. I've been watching you. Like, I can see you." And he's like,
God.
Yeah, saying all these really creepy freaking horror movie things into the phone, being like, "I've been watching you." And he's like, "I'm basically here," and blah, 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 blah. So she gets freaked out. She slams the phone and runs 2 blocks away to where her grandparents live. And they live like right behind our elementary school. So she runs up 2 blocks and she's like, goes there and she tells them what happened. And they're like, "What So they call the police, and the police go and they trace the number. I'm surprised they even got them to do that.
Yeah.
Trace the number, and they find out that this call was coming from the abandoned house right across the street from her grandparents.
No way. That is amazing.
And like, there was no one there. And so our theory was always like, it was the ghost. And just so freaking creepy. Like, she would not be home alone after that.
I'm not
for like the
surprised.
longest time.
Because I've seen, like, you might have seen it yourself. I've seen there's a really famous video on YouTube. It's like a documentary video, and it's of a police force. I think it's in the States somewhere. I'm not too sure where, but it's a detective getting interviewed, and he said, "Yeah, we would get calls of a woman requiring help from this address." He said, and every time we go out, it was the same address. It was a derelict property. He said, and the phone line wasn't active. He said, and we'd get this call once a month.
The phone line wasn't
active. Shiver thinking about it. Yeah. Oh God.
And so we thought, our theory was it was the ghost, and then like it was kind of a lot of jumping around, but like we've been friends forever. So like once we kind of fell out a little bit in high school, and then once we hit college, we became really good friends again. And for like a while, we were all like super into the ghost stuff. Like let's go and like go to the creepy cemetery and blah blah.
I've got a Ouija board and all that kind of.
Yeah. And then, or like, there's a local bridge in town. This is not really a ghost story, but it is a creepy, not urban legend. It actually happened, but like of our town, it was a legend. There's this bridge called Airtight Bridge, which sounds creepy anyway, like airtight.
Yeah. I'd hope it will be airtight, but
we used to go down there and fish and swim in the river, and despite the fact that like when we were little, we would go there, my parents would take us and we'd fish and we'd swim. But later, as we found out, even though our parents would still take us there, they had found like a torso.
Wow.
Of a woman, like wedged under the bridge from where she came down the river.
Oh my God.
And our parents would still take us there to swim, and we were just like so scandalized. We're like, what's the matter with you? But there was a thing where you would drive to the bridge at night and have to like
like a ritual sort of thing.
Yeah. So we would do stuff like that, and she was like really into it. And then one day, like, I called her up and I was talking to her, and I was like, started to talk about some creepy ghost stuff, and she goes, "Stop." And as far as I know, like her scary story had ended. Yeah. Because she had moved out of that house.
Right.
Just down the street, but she moved out of that house, and the thing that had bothered her
had stopped, allegedly.
Stayed.
Yeah.
And so this time we're talking about ghosts, and previously she had told me like so the last thing she told me about the ghost before our having this conversation was, so the creepiest thing happened. She like started out like that. The creepiest thing happened to me. I went on a run like a crazy person around the neighborhood for some exercise, and she's like, and I stopped in front of my old house, which her cousins had purchased, but didn't ever say anything creepy was happening there. Yeah. She stopped in front of the old house. She's like, I stopped in front of the old house, and I was just looking at it, and all of a sudden I kind of felt like I froze, and I got like really upset. And she's like, I felt like whatever was in that house noticed me again. And she's like, so I ran back home, and she's like, don't freak out too much, but I'm starting to hear the breathing again.
Oh my God. It's amazing.
And I'm like, no. And like, we're really into it at this point. So the next time I call her, that's the last thing she told me about ghost stuff. Right. The next time I call her, she's like, never speak to me about ghost stuff ever again.
Right.
Just like this thing that was kind of like a part of our relationship. She's like, never again. And I'm like, what happened? And she just refused to tell me. And I'm just like, to this day, I'm just like, what happened to you that you don't want to talk about it? And I'm like, this is like a freaking horror story.
Wow. And she still hasn't told you at all?
No, she's seemingly fine. It's not like she's haunted or anything now. Like, at least from what I can see, she has a kid. She's happy. She's a psychologist. But just out of nowhere, she was like, never again.
That's interesting.
No more ghost stuff.
Everybody listening now knows there's a reason why she's saying that. And it's not just, I've gone off the topic.
what happened? It
Yeah.
was so crazy.
That's amazing.
So kind of about, I'll have to tell this at the very end, even though it goes towards the very beginning, but here's another one that was pretty good. And this is, so a little more background on where I lived as well. I told you how it was like a square in my friend's neighborhood and my neighborhood in the fairgrounds. So also about this area, and I think that's why we had a lot of activity there, was it was right in between the town's two cemeteries.
Wow. Okay.
The oldest one in town was at the top of the neighborhood, and the biggest one in town was at the south of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we used to kind of attribute that to being like why we'd see so much stuff in between
in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, because the big old cemeteries and the oldest cemetery, and that old cemetery was real creepy. That definitely had ghosts. I had a whole car of people actually see one once, not just me, which made me feel really good. I was like, oh, good, we see him too.
Yeah.
We called him Hoodie Ghost. Not that he was scary. So the cemetery was kind of raised, which also creeped me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you had to go upstairs to get into it, and I didn't like the idea
weird.
of maybe
like on a hill or something.
Yeah, I didn't like the idea of being like eye level, maybe with where bodies were.
Yeah. That's a cracking point, actually. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of cemeteries. Like, I don't like the idea of walking over bodies. Creeps me out. But one day at that little staircase that was carved into stone going up, we saw a guy sitting there, and he was looked like a teenager or early 20s, and he was sitting there, and he had his hoodie pulled up over his head, so his eyes were kind of shaded, and you just saw the lower part of his mouth, and he was leaning over with his arms like on his legs, wide-legged spread, leaning over, just kind of chilling. And for some reason, as we're driving by in the car, we kind of slow down, and we all just look at him and we watch him, and because apparently everyone in the car sensed that there was something weird about this one. And as we're watching him, he just fades out. Like, he's just not there anymore.
Wow.
And everyone is like, like everyone in the car gasped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you all saw that one? And they're just like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, well, that's good. It isn't just me. He would show up every once in a while, so we just called him Hoodie Ghost, and he just hung out on those stairs. I don't know what he was doing, but he was just chilling. And then I ended up moving out. I moved out as soon as I turned 18, because I was like, I'm out of here. Signed a lease, got my own place.
Yeah.
And I moved into this new place all by myself. It's a 2-bedroom apartment on the second level. And for the first week, I think I slept in the living room because I didn't have a bed frame yet. So I just threw my mattress on the floor in the living room where the TV was.
Yeah.
Because typically I'd have to sleep with extra noise
to fall asleep.
Yeah. Or else I'd hear everything.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very paranoid. I've always been paranoid about anything that's like an entryway. I am not super fond of mirrors. I don't like windows. I don't like doors. Like, if I'm sleeping in a room, up until I got married, I had to have the door closed and locked,
Yeah.
Paranoid. So I would go through my house every night, make sure all the doors are locked, because I had a front door and a back door that had like a little patio that had stairs going all the way down to the main level.
Yeah.
I'd make sure everything was locked. I'd shut all the windows. I'd lock all the windows. And then I'd wake up in the morning and my windows would be open. And I'd be like, okay, it's the wind and like the wood expanding. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but in the back, I know, but I'm like, I got to live here alone. I don't want to spook myself.
Yeah, of course.
Even though it's fairly hard to spook me now, but still, I don't invite it.
Yeah.
So I live like that for a little while, and eventually I get kind of lonely, and I have a friend who, her name was Rachel, and she was like me. She was part of the Jehovah's Witness community for a long time.
Yeah.
And so we had bonded in high school, and then I was like, dude, you should move in, like, get out of your parents' house. I have an extra room, like, come be my roommate. And so she was like, okay, sure. The thing we didn't consider was that she also, like me, ghosts had an affinity for her. So she would get herself into spooky situations as well.
Yeah.
And so this is the first really big instance of where I realized like if I have two people who are spooky together, then we're gonna
You're
have
going to
a spooky
charge each
time.
other up, sort of thing.
Yeah. So she moves in, and I tell her, I'm like, there might be something here. The windows like to open themselves, but I'm still of the mind that it's just some science explanation somewhere.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, we'll go with that. So I don't know why we did it, but the way we would knock on each other's door is we'd go and just like tap.
Right. Yeah, the scariest knock that you could possibly imagine. Yeah.
Of course. or like scratch at each other's door, like, nah, let me in.
Yeah.
But we both just did that to knock on the doors. So one night I'm sitting in the living room, and this is like the first instance of us together. I'm sitting in the living room, and she's in her bedroom, and I hear her yelling, "Come in!" And I'm like, "What?" So like I get up and I walk over and I open her door, and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I said come in." And I'm like, I wasn't asking to come in. I wasn't at your door. And she's like, "Oh." She's like, "Well, then I'll go ahead and ignore that scratching I heard." And I'm like, and I was like, "Yes, let us ignore that." And I walked back. I was like, "No." So then the next thing that starts happening is, I guess it kind of did happen a little bit when I was on my own too. Like after I moved into my bedroom, and I would go in there with my two little dogs, and I would make sure my door was locked, and then I'd turn the TV on and I'd go to sleep. And you would hear like in the kitchen, like maybe sounding like people shuffling around opening cupboards and stuff. And I'd be like, okay, I hear that. My dogs would notice it. They'd like perk up and look, and then they'd be like, "Oh, whatever," and they'd go back to sleep. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna use that tactic. We're gonna ignore it. Yeah. For your own sanity. They're doing in there. Yeah. So after she moves in, we have one of those nights where we're like, okay, we're going to bed, and we say bye. She goes into her room. I go into my room. She's like me. We both lock our doors. We crawl into bed. I doze for a little bit, and then I wake up, and I hear my door rattle a little. Yeah. And I'm like, why is that so rattly? Like, is it the wind or is it her? And then I hear the scratching, and I'm like, oh, it's you. I'm like, you want to come in? And I don't get a response.
Oh, see, the lack of response would send the fear of God through me.
Yeah. So then I'm just like, and my dogs had noticed the sound too. So it's not just me. They're like looking, and they probably expect the same thing. They're like, oh, it's just her. She's going to come in. But no. So I sit there for a little bit longer, and I'm like, all right, so we're going to ignore this one. And then I hear like in the kitchen, like someone cooking up a storm, like pans and slamming the cupboard and opening the fridge, and the stuff jingling, and like someone's cooking. Yeah. And it also just sounds really windy in the living room, and the doors keeps rattling, which will happen if you had like all the windows open. The doors would rattle a little bit. And so like I said, though, we don't leave windows open or doors unlocked or anything like that when we go to bed. We're very paranoid. So finally I'm like, what is happening? Like, is there like did someone break in? Like, that's how much noise is happening. And I'm like, or is she out there? Like, whatever. So I'm texting her, and I'm getting no response. And I'm like, I'm calling her. So I call her, and she's like, what? And I'm like, are you at my door or in the kitchen? And she's like, no, you woke me up. Oh, wow. And I'm like, okay, well, you just stop and listen for a minute. And so she goes silent, and she's listening, and she can hear all this stuff too. And her door is rattling, and there's scratches at her door. And she's like, are you at my door? And I'm like, no, dude, no, I am not. I am not at your door. And she goes, oh, dang it. She's like, do you think it's a ghost, or do you think it's an actual person? And I'm like, I don't know. It's so loud. So I'm like, we gotta go. Cause if it's a person, like, we gotta.
Yeah, you need to do something, don't you?
We gotta do something. We can't just let them rummage around and take all of our crap and blah, blah, blah. So, like I'd mentioned, most females tend to, at least, I don't know if it's an Illinois thing. I don't know. Yeah. But we tend to sleep with some kind of blunt force trauma object nearby, just in case we need to blunt force trauma someone. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I had like a katana or something silly like that, because I had some decorative ones, and I'm like, with a katana.
Gonna cut you in two.
Yeah, she's got like a bat. And I'm like, we're on the phone still, like creeping to our doors. And I'm like, okay, on 3, open your door, and we're going to run out at the same time and run to the kitchen. If there's someone in there, we're going to beat them down, you know? So we fling the doors open at the same time. We run out like, ah, and run into the kitchen. There's no one there. It's nothing out of place.
Nothing out of place. Oh my God. I expected you to say there's stuff all over the floor or something like that.
Yeah, there's like, no, there wasn't anything out of place, which is even weirder.
Yeah.
And the only thing that is different is the windows, or the windows on the side of the house that have no way to get to them because we're on the second floor are wide open, and it's gusty in there. And we're just like, ugh. We go double check the locks, and we close the windows, and we lock them, and we're like, let us sleep,
Yeah.
All right, so we fast forward a little bit, and I don't know how we're just casually living with all that. We're just like, whatever, it's all good.
Yeah.
But fast forward, my boyfriend is moving in, and I'm like, all right, so I just want to let you know there's a ghost. And he's like, oh, no, there's not a ghost. I don't believe in that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, but if you hear stuff in the kitchen, it's just a ghost. It's not an intruder. Just sleep through it. Don't worry about it. Fast forward a little bit more time of him being skeptical. We have another instance of it getting very drafty, rattly doors. Someone's in the kitchen.
Wow.
And cooking up a ghost meal or whatever they're doing. And he is like, someone broke in. Someone's here. I gotta go get him. And I'm like, we're like, no one's here. And so he goes out, katana, I'm gonna. So he does kind of like what we did, bust through the door and then runs. And he flies into the kitchen, flings the light on. There's nobody there. But here's the difference between his story and our story. His story, when he flies in there and flips on the light, is he sees a very white face in the window of the kitchen.
Wow.
And in his mind, he's still like, that's the intruder. So he goes and runs and flings the door open, and there's no one there. Now, to remind you of the layout of this house, my back door in my kitchen had a porch, and then about 15 stairs that went down pretty steeply to the main level. Right. There is no possible way someone could go from the far window of our porch and down those stairs without tanking it really hard.
Yeah.
And being like rolling around in pain in the grass when my husband came through. Well, my boyfriend at the time came through the door. So he comes back in, shaken, and is just kind of like, so it was a ghost. And we're like,
so ghosts exist.
Yes, it was. And I'm like, I would like you to continue to remember this event. And if I ever tell you there's a ghost again, please believe me. If I ever come to you and I'm like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. It's a legitimate thing.
Just
Alicia, we've got to our time, unfortunately. But I sincerely want to say thank you so much for coming on. We need to get you back on, because I get the strangest feeling of that's just the tip of the iceberg with what you've experienced, to be honest.
Yeah, I do have some more that are pretty interesting. So.
Amazing. Then we will definitely get you back on. We'll get you back on and say,
sure.
We're in January now, aren't we? We'll get you back on towards the end of Feb. So just to give it a few weeks, get another few people on, and get in touch with me again to remind me at the back end of February. Okay.
So
the last week of Feb. And we'll do this again, and we'll do part 2, because this is definitely only part 1.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's
Alicia,
my whole life.
I cannot thank you enough. I mean, I shouldn't really thank you, because it's now in the UK now. It's 12:15 midnight, and
oh my goodness,
I'm already shitting myself. Becca's fast asleep downstairs. I've got to turn all the lights off, do all that sort of stuff, and I am not looking forward to it in the slightest, to be honest with you. And yeah, I'm already convinced as well. I'll explain this when I put this on the show. There's been 2 podcasts. One I've listened to, and this what I'm doing now. One was another show by a UK podcaster called Harold Hughes, who does a show called The Unexplained. He interviewed a lady who, very similar to yourself, can see ghosts, can see demons, has experienced all this carry on. And whilst she's talking on occasion, there's a low male voice coming in with hers. And on occasion with this, I'll say this now on the call with you, but when people hear this, I know you said earlier that there's planes going overhead, but there was an occasion just about 3/4 of the way in when I could hear a low male voice underneath as you're talking, rumbling. Like, more or less in sync with your syllables counts. Tell me if anyone else says that. I'm not just going mad. You might hear it yourself, Alicia, when you listen back. But
maybe.
But you've scared the living shit out of me, so congratulations. That's what I like to do the show for.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever said it on a recording before. So,
well, I consider me very privileged, and I sincerely mean that. Well, Alicia, I will let you go. And as I say, get back in touch towards the end of Feb, and we'll indeed have you back on, because this has been fascinating and amazing.
Yep, I got a lot more, so I definitely will.
Thank you very much, Alicia. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, dude. I'll speak to you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye now. The midpoint, Forreston midpoint. And how are we having a midpoint? An hour and 15 minutes in. What is this? WrestleMania 4? There's about 5 people who will get that reference. Anyway, it is the midpoint. How good are those stories? Like, sincerely, I know that we've talked in the past about people who seem to attract the paranormal, but bloody hell, that lady right there attracted the paranormal like I attract takeaway food. And let me tell you, that's almost a daily occurrence in lockdown. Speaking of which, I tell you what, I am getting bloody the mick took out of me. I really am. It's because like 2 takeaway companies have emailed me. I said to Becca last week, you know what? I'm going to stop eating junk food. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start doing this, that, and the other. And I'm going to be what people would term a bronzed Adonis. Yes. And then within 5 minutes, I had 2 emails. Your phone must be listening to you, because I had 2 emails that said, please don't go. Please stay with us. Here's 25% off all your next deliveries and orders between now and the end of January. And I was like, well, maybe I'll start in February then. Takeaway for tea tonight, everyone. Hurrah! So I ordered a pizza. But you don't just order a pizza. You have to order a pizza and some fries. So you have a bit of a condiment to go with it. And then the pizza company say, wow, you've just broke our magic ceiling. Therefore, you also get a free garlic bread. And it's like, fuck, man. I do want takeaway food, but I don't want to become a sloth. So please stop encouraging my slothment by saying things like, hey, well done for spending another £1. We're going to send you some beans and some corn. And I don't need it. I just want the pizza. I mean, don't get me wrong. I could have left a note in the comments to say, please don't give me the garlic bread. I have enough. I didn't, because I'm a little fat boy. Yes, such a heavenly fat boy. Anyway, you wonderful people, thank you for maintaining during this midpoint. We are going to go right back into some more spooky stories in about 30 seconds, I imagine. I just want to say thank you so much. It's the start of a new year, and it is going to get slowly better. I promise that it is. I mean, who am I to promise? I am a god. I promise you, earthlings. No, but it will get better. We know that. We just have to ride it out, don't we? And we ride it out by listening to podcasts. So hopefully these been a little bit longer. Mean that you have less time to wait in between podcasts and all that jazz. So I do sincerely appreciate your support. You guys make the show. Literally. I mean, this without the 2 callers, this show is not 2 hours long. No. It's about 30 seconds of me singing, making silly voices, calling myself fat, and then going. And let's be honest, that's not entertaining for anyone. Except those who would bully me in school. They'd probably listen and go, ha, he is fat. We told him he was fat, and now he's acknowledging it. I wasn't really bullied for being fat in school. I should have been, really, because I was fucking obese. Anyway, enough of that. Should we get back to more spook? I think we should. Yes, we shall. Okay, let's do it. Okay, Kev. Thanks, Kev. Okay, so it's that fantastic time of the show when I get to speak to one of you fantastic, wonderful listeners. And I have the ultimate pleasure to be speaking to Alison all the way over in States. I was going to say then in the States. And she's going to tell us all about an apartment that she lived in for, I think it's around 18 years, isn't it, Alison?
Yes, it was just under 18 years.
Amazing. So whereabouts in the States are you?
New Jersey.
Okay, and I bet you like we're always amazed in England the size of American states in general. So New Jersey, to us, it's described like the way we say Liverpool or Manchester. It's an area, but I think New Jersey is probably the size of Scotland.
Uh,
I mean, that's a big
Probably.
estimate.
It is actually. I guess if my husband were in here with me, he would be able to tell you the exact number of square miles. But it's large. It's a large state. Just to give you an idea, where I am in central New Jersey, we're an hour from New York, by train or
Wow.
by car. We're an hour from Manhattan. But if we were going to Philadelphia in the other direction, it would take about an hour and 20 minutes.
Right.
Because some of New Jersey borders Pennsylvania, of course. So, but then there's a whole shore area. It's a pretty big state, and I think we have 8 million people. So
Jesus.
it's very
That's
popular.
amazing.
Yeah.
For a state, that's just brilliant. Anyway, sorry, that's just my fascination with American geography there. So let's get cracking then. So tell us about this apartment you lived in.
Okay, so my husband and I met in grad school, and we got married 2 years after we met. And we were still in graduate school. We moved into this apartment in June of 1992. And I think I had sent you a link to it. Did you see what they look like? It's called a garden apartment.
Yes, and you did send a very detailed sort of description of it, which I'll put on the show notes too, or I'll put on the Facebook page, sorry, to accompany the show.
Okay. Yeah. So it's what's called a garden apartment. So we were set back. It's many buildings, but we were set far back into the complex, and we were on an end away from the main drive. So it was very nice and secluded. And we had a little park area next to us. So the apartments are, we were in a one bedroom apartment. And we were on the ground floor, which it was a little more than the ground floor because it was above the basement. But we were on the ground floor, and then there was an apartment on top of us, which we ended up taking several years later. So we ended up in two apartments. It had one main entrance, and when you walked into the main entrance, there was a door to one and a door upstairs to the other. So it was the apartments were built in the 1970s on land that was, I knew somebody there who told me that when he was a kid, the apartments were built and they were just built on nothing. It was land that was empty. Although my husband's done a lot of research on the area, and he thinks at one point this was actually farmland.
Okay.
And if that's the case, we live in a house now that is, as a crow flies, less than a mile from the apartment, probably like half a mile or 3/4 of a mile. We're very close to where the apartments were. So the land that we're on now, the houses were built in the 1960s. The land that we're on now probably would have been the same farm.
The same land, yeah.
As the apartments. But what's also interesting about this is it's near the DNR Canal, which was a canal that was built from 1830 to 1834. And in all likelihood, the Irish immigrants, it was largely Irish immigrants who built this canal, would have been encamped on this land while they were digging the canal.
Right.
So,
I see. Yeah. Whilst they're working.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people died. And I think were just buried, on the land.
Wow.
And they moved on and continued the canal. So that's the only thing we could think of that could have been actually a traumatic event that happened here, as far as we know.
I see. Yeah.
Okay. So that's why I brought that up. So we moved in June of 1992, and everything was fine. And then in the autumn of that year, so a few months later, I was in grad school, and I often studied in the dining area of the apartment because there was a big window there. I studied there whenever I was working. And out of the corner of my eye, I would see this black, almost mist.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I think the first few times it happened, I didn't think anything of it. And then I thought, what is this thing? Because I realized I saw it Mainly, I saw it where the dining area, the living room, and the hall sort of intersected. That spot is where it would be.
Hmm.
And I saw it several times, and I started thinking, this is kind of weird. And it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a form. It was just sort of, I actually was describing it to a friend of mine as it was almost an impression, and then it would
Right.
just fade away. It was this mist.
And can I just jump in and ask, when you say it kind of appeared, or you seen it in the corner of your eye,
Mm-hmm.
would it, would you, if you turn to look at it, would it be there full bodied, or would it you'd catch it dispersing?
I would catch it dispersing.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I saw it out of the corner of my eye and turned and it was gone. I would see it. There would be motion, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
And I would turn and there'd be this thing. And then sometimes when I was in the kitchen, it would be in the kitchen. I would just turn around and this would be dispersing.
Wow.
So it took me a while to realize what was going on and that it was weird. So one day I was on the phone with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and I started telling her about this.
Yeah.
And as I was telling her about this, my husband came home. He was also in grad school. He worked on campus at Rutgers. And he came home as I was telling the story that I would see this thing. And he heard everything I said, just walked into the living room, said nothing. So my friend and I were on the phone about an hour. I got off the phone. I said to him, "Didn't you hear what I was just saying to her? Don't you think that's weird?"
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It sort of disturbed me that he didn't react at all. And he said, "I've seen it too."
Oh God! Wow.
So I said, then I got really scared.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'd rather be out of my mind. Thanks.
Yeah.
that we're both seeing this thing. And
I also like the fact that he's seen it, but not decided to tell. Probably not to scare you, I imagine. But he's decided to not tell you when he has seen it. That's like a really funny thing too.
Right. And that's sort of the male thing. My thing was, I'm not going to tell him because he's going to think I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
So, but he said that's what it was. He saw it several times. And I just asked him about it when I was making the notes for this, because he said that he would usually see it when he was sitting on a certain chair in the living room. And he'd look over and see it. And he said for him, he got that it moved from this table we had up against the wall in the living room towards like down the hall. So he always saw it as motion this way.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Whereas where I was sitting, I would see it as motion and that would just dissipate. But he would see it kind of start elsewhere. And he described exactly the same thing I saw, that it was usually like waist and chest height.
Right.
We didn't really get the sense of it going higher or lower. It was just this sort of mist that was waist and chest height. So when I found out that he saw it, I thought, wow, this is really scary. So that went on for a while. We would see it a lot in the autumn, and there was never really anything else that I noticed, except one time I had what I think was physical contact.
Yeah.
I was in the kitchen and I was wearing, I used to wear this like t-shirt material tank top all the time that had a little hood on the back. But it was t-shirt material. So it just sort of flopped there. I never used it.
Yeah.
It was just on it. And one time I went to go pick something up off the floor and the hood ended up like put up over my head.
Oh.
So it was like, it was almost like if you would expect a small child to just grab this thing. And
like a prank.
Put it on you. Right. And I thought, okay, this is really, really, really weird. I've worn this top about 300 times probably. I've worn a lot in the summer and I had it for years. This has never happened when I leaned over. What the heck? And it was fully on my head.
Wow. See, as well, if you're saying it's fully on the head as well, as everybody knows who's wore a hoodie, if the hood just flops as you bend over, it doesn't go it's not pulled over your head, is it? It sits on the back of your head.
Right. It was put on my head.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
So I took it off and I tried to duplicate this.
Yeah.
I tried to duplicate it again and again, and I never could. It would never. But it wasn't just that it wasn't just that it was on my head. It was that it was like I felt someone put it on my head.
Wow.
You see,
that's terrifying.
So
yeah.
It was like if someone, and I was alone in the house. I was alone in the apartment at the time. So that was just really, really strange. And I don't know how I wasn't more scared. I think,
and that's the middle of the day this happened. So
yes, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. Right.
Wow.
Right.
See, I think this is I was saying this to someone the other day along the lines of, it's all well and good when someone tells you something scary that's happened in the middle of the night, because you're kind of like, wow, that's a little bit tropey, but it's scary. But for me, when somebody says in the middle of the day, this terrifying thing happened, I don't know, it adds an air of believability to it, because if somebody was going to make something up, you would say at night, middle of the night, everyone was asleep.
Right.
But you wouldn't say like, it was dead bright outside, I was just doing the washing, and then I was attacked by a small child. Do you know what I mean? It's
right.
petrifying.
Fact, it's funny that you say that, because whenever I saw the mist, it was always in broad daylight on a sunny day.
Wow, okay.
A sunny autumn day. I never saw it at night. And that might have had to do, maybe it had to do with the lighting, because it was bright inside. So
yeah.
I never saw it at night, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, never once.
That is interesting.
Yeah, never once did I see it at night. That is interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So that went on, and then it just sort of seemed to stop. And then in 1994, we got a dog. And he was half Border Collie, half Norwich Terrier, and he was just unbelievably smart. So it was, you may know Border Collies. They're right there.
Yeah.
With you know?
Well, funny enough, we've got a friend who's just got a Border Collie, and they didn't expect the energy that this Border Collie has.
Right.
And it's unreal. Like, it's apparently unreal. They're saying if they love it now, and they're saying they're going to keep it, obviously, and they're just dealing with it. But they said if they would have known what they were getting into, they would have went for, like, I don't know, a Chihuahua or something, because this dog, they said, it's like a farm dog apparently, and it's waiting to work. It's a working dog.
Yeah.
That has nothing to work for other than chasing a tennis ball now and again. So I think they've got the work cut out. So yes, I'm fully aware of Border Collies.
Yes. So he was, and they're just so intelligent. So when you have a Border Collie in a house with you, it's like having another person. I mean, he is my intellectual equal. I consider myself pretty smart. So it was great having him around. And we used to actually take him into New Brunswick to walk. He liked the city. New Brunswick is a little city where Rutgers is, a college town, small city. And we were walking with him probably about 1996. He was probably about 2, maybe 3. This might have been 97. We were walking with him down the street in New Brunswick, and I can't describe this. I wish I had this on video. As we're walking around, he's all happy, trotting along. Then suddenly it almost seemed as if something landed on his back, because he stopped and he turned and he started snapping both ways, like he was trying to get something off of his back, but it wasn't there. But there was nothing there. And right after that, the tail went down. He was just sort of slinking along, and he didn't want to walk normally. At first, I almost thought he was ill. Yeah. And Patrick, my husband said to me, I think we should go home. He's just weird. And I said, oh, yeah. And I was so nervous. So as soon as we got home, he just ran into our bedroom, and he didn't come out for about a day. He seemed fine in the bedroom, but he would not come into the living room, dining room, or kitchen. So to drink or eat, we had to bring his food in there. He just refused to come out. And we thought...
Wow. And dogs know as well, don't they? Allegedly. Dogs are very, very sensitive when it comes to this sort of thing. But it's interesting that happened whilst you were outside as well.
Right. Yes. And we were in... So we were in, a town over. And what we were thinking is, was this something that came from our place? or was this something that we sort of picked up? And then periodically after that, he would get spooked. Something would bother him, and he'd run into the bedroom and hide for a long time. And it was something that we never saw.
Wow.
So then, it was around 1996, because I think we were seeing the black mist again, because the black mist, we went almost about 4 years without seeing it, and then it came back. And a friend of mine used to joke that it was an election year ghost. Those years we had presidential elections.
Yeah, or it's the World Cup. That's what it is. It's coming back to watch the World Cup. Bloody hell!
Right. So it was 4 years went by with nothing, and then more.
And just to ask, was there anything of significance the 4 years prior and then the 4 years later? As in, like, for example, when it first took off, was there any sort of angst in the family or bereavements or anything? And anything else 4 years on, similar?
No, there was nothing.
Wow.
That's what was strange. There was nothing. All of our parents were alive. I mean, 3 of them still are. We didn't, there was nothing. We were just in school. That was the only angst. We were in grad school. That was really it. So once in a while, Tristan would get spooked. And that was it. Because we hadn't seen the black mist since it was 92 and then 96. And nothing else was really going on. Then in 1998, and I could tell you exactly when this was Christmas time, 1998. I was home. My husband had been working at Rutgers, and I was working with him for a while at this place where he was working at Rutgers. But I was home one day because I had a bad cold. I was sick with a bad cold. I didn't take any medication. I was still pretty much am into natural remedies. So I didn't take anything. I was just drinking garlic broth and tea. Yeah. And Bill Clinton's impeachment trial was on the television.
Yeah, the Monica Lewinsky thingamajig. Right. Yeah.
I'm not even going to say anything now, but think about
No. Moving swiftly.
How ludicrous this is. Okay. So that was on, and I was watching it. So they took a break at one point. And they said, we'll reconvene, at 2:00. And I walked down the hall and went to the bathroom, and I was really, really focused on thinking about this. I was completely in my head.
Yeah.
And I just so annoyed at how ridiculous this was, and not even thinking of anything else. I think our dog was in the bedroom. I don't think he was in the living room. He was not in the living room with me. He was hanging out in the bedroom. Yeah. So I come out of the bathroom, I walk down the hall, and I saw standing on this little rug that we had for Tristan that was in the living room. So when I'm walking down the hall, I'm looking straight toward the living room. A full body apparition.
Wow.
And this is what the really interesting thing was. I can still picture it very much right now as I'm thinking about it. But I didn't even realize I saw it till about 30 seconds later. Yeah. I walked down the hall. I see this thing standing on the rug. I sit down. I'm still thinking about the trial. And then I suddenly, it was almost literally like this. I suddenly thought, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And I could tell you it was a man. It was a young man. He was in some sort of military uniform. He was very good looking, dark hair, very good looking. And I think that's what it was. Like, he seemed so non-threatening, and he was just like staring down the hall at me. And
oh God, I've just got a shiver then.
Yeah.
I went with you then on that little journey in my head, and it wasn't pretty. But go on.
Yeah. So I saw it, I walked by, I sat down, I went on thinking, and then it hit me. And I looked at the rug, and of course there's nothing there. And I'm thinking, I just saw a person standing here on this rug. And what was actually interesting about it is if my husband had come home or somebody else was standing there and totally taken me by surprise, I would have screamed. I would have jumped.
Yeah.
Right? I felt, I didn't you come in, right? With that, I didn't react at all until I sat down and realized what happened.
When you say you knew it was a military, was it like in uniform or camouflage gear, or was
Uniform,
it a modern?
uniform. And I think it was. And it's funny. I was actually looking for this again the other day. It was a blue. It was a very pretty blue uniform.
Yeah.
I would put it somewhere in the 19th century. The jacket was not long. The jacket was short, and I kind of remember a band this way. At first, I thought it might have been like Civil War Union soldier blue, but then I think I just thought that because, you think Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War
you
War,
might have attached something in your head that you already know to it, sort of.
Right. You're thinking of the big wars.
Yeah.
But I've been looking through uniforms. I was actually looking at a couple sites online. I can't find it, but I would say that there were so many different types of uniforms because
of course,
depending upon what division you were in, it wasn't uniform, as it were, at that time.
Hooray!
Really
very good.
So, but I would really like to find it. And I think I want to do a little more research, because I said to my husband, well, maybe while they were building the canal, there were some military overseers. That could have been doing it. But he was young. He was young. I would say like 20, 21 years old.
And was he looking at you when you seen him, or was he otherwise occupied, would you say? Or?
No, he's looking at me. He was just standing there, staring straight down the hall.
Oh, God. See, it's each time you say that, straight down the hall. And I'll tell you why. It's because in me dad's house that he still lives in, where I lived in up till I moved in with Becca, in all honesty, when you come out of the bathroom, you are looking straight down a landing, and there's a bedroom off one side, a staircase to the other side, then another bedroom off one side, and then there's a main bedroom ahead, and it's quite a long corridor. And if that bedroom door's open, you can see right to the window, which looks out onto the street. So I'm picturing me being stood in that. I've just got another shiver thinking about it. Stood in that bathroom and looking down that corridor and seeing this figure stood there. Because it's also, I don't know, there's just something about being watched from down a long corridor that just feels quite claustrophobic. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I almost feel like, and I have heard, probably on your show, but on other shows as well, Ghost Story Guys, I think sometimes people will say that when they see a full body apparition, they're not scared. And I really relate to that, because I think there's something in your mind that at the moment it stops you from being afraid.
Yeah.
And for
sorry, go.
For me, it was kind of like, I didn't even realize it was there because I was so much in my head thinking about something else.
Yeah.
And I walked by like this was perfectly normal.
Well, you know what's really interesting as well, from how you describe that person, and I'll ask you this as an obvious question, I suppose. Were you that full-bodied that if you were outside and that person was across the street, would you even consider that it was a ghost? Or would you just assume?
No,
there you go.
Fully solid. It was fully solid. There was
wow.
No, I didn't see anything behind him. It was fully solid there.
Amazing.
And I guess I thought probably for 3 seconds. It was
wow.
It was,
I mean, the fact that you see it for 3 seconds and nothing registers to say that shouldn't be here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
But I think there's something in the human mind that protects you from realizing what you're seeing in some way.
Definitely. So, that's fascinating. Fascinating.
Well, there's kind of more on this, because when my husband came home, I told him. He walks in, I said, guess what I saw right here? And he said, I believe you, because, and we figured it was somehow related to that mist in some way.
Definitely. I thought you were going to say then, and your husband turned around and said, was it a military guy? Because I've been seeing him for weeks. I just haven't told you.
No, I would have had a heart attack then. But it's funny, because where I saw him is where my husband used to see the start of the black mist.
Wow.
Right. Now it gets scarier. Okay. So this is actually going to freak you out.
Before you tell me this, right, just because whilst it's in my head, I've just come up with I've never heard this theory said before. So due to your story, I'm going to put across a theory now. on the sighting of ghosts, just so it's on record, because otherwise I'll forget it. I wonder now, with everything you've just said there, if, as a human being, as a human observer of a spirit, you need to be in a certain state of mind. And if you're not, you see it in its non-tuned in form. So you know, like the way television tunes into, or an old television would tune into from static into a clear picture.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I wonder if you're seeing the black mist when you know, you're in a certain frame of mind, you see black mist, your husband sees black mist. But as you've described it quite vividly there, is you were completely tuned into the one event of the impeachment process, and you were kind of in your own head, and therefore you've allowed the channel to tune itself into that frequency.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Your guard's not being everywhere, you've been focused on one thing, so you've been allowed to see the mist in its actual form, as opposed to its static, non-tuned in form.
Right. I've thought of that too. That type of verbalize it that way. But I've thought of that thing like it's something that's always there, but there was just this one moment where I was so out of myself.
Yeah.
In my head and like almost out of my body. It was almost like I was out of my body.
Wow.
Because I was so focused on this. And plus I didn't feel well, so I didn't want to be thinking about not feeling well.
Well, we can be co-creators of that theory then. That's the history books can write it up like that then.
Right. And you kind of wonder, you know, when people talk about seeing shadow figures and stuff, that is your shadow figure somebody else's full body apparition?
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, completely.
Right? Well, so the next part of this is a couple of days later, it was literally 2 or 3 days later. And it was at night. This is the one thing that happened at night. I was wrapping Christmas presents in the dining area at the dining table. And my husband was in the living room watching something. I think he was watching Saturday Night Live on television.
Yeah.
Saturday night. And the rug was there that Tristan would hang out on. And because we had the Christmas tree in the living room, we moved a big chair near the rug. So it was a chair that he would sit on a lot, and he'd, you know, be either the rug or the chair he would hang out on usually. So the chair was put over by the rug. So he was on the chair. All of a sudden, he jumped up, and I didn't see it. My husband saw him jump up. I got to see him run under the coffee table. Yeah. And then after a few seconds, slinked into the bedroom, down the hall into the bedroom, and wouldn't come out.
Wow.
So he was right near where I had seen that apparition 3 days before.
Wow. See, there's too much going on there in that one spot. It's the origin point of where your husband's seeing the mist. Yeah. You've literally seen a full-bodied apparition there, and now your dog's in the exact same spot and getting the heebie-jeebies out of her. So.
Right. So I almost felt vindicated when when the dog did this.
I bet you did, yeah.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, so he saw something too, and he wouldn't go near there for a long time. It was a few days. I mean, he really wouldn't go there for a few days. So that was like, wow. So I saw full body apparition there, and then
terrifying.
Then he saw that. Then that happened with him. So I don't think anything happened for a while after that. So that was it. But then shortly after that, we started to have some strange things happen again. One of the things that would happen, and this was really, really strange, was we had at the front door a chain. You know how you have the lock, you had like a lock that you turn. You had the lock on the doorknob, and then you had another lock, like a deadbolt, and then a chain on the door.
Yeah.
Something started to happen. I just lost my earring. Anyway, something started to happen that really freaked me out. And this happened, it was the autumn and early winter, like around Christmas time, that the chain on the door would start moving of its own accord. Oh. And it wasn't it usually took some momentum to start it going. Like I'd walk in with the dog and the door would close and the chain would, normally just move back and forth
Yeah.
a little. Well, then it started to happen where, and this happened several times, where it was almost like somebody was taking the chain and playing with it and bouncing
Oh
it,
my God.
And actually one time, it was, and I would try to ignore it. And one time it went on for so long, our dog went and he got a drink of water. And then I was looking at it and he turned around and looked at it for a while. And he looked at me and looked at it. Like, are you seeing this? It was literally about a minute this
Yeah.
happened.
Wow.
And again, I would try to duplicate this. Like, could somehow this chain have done this on its own accord? But no, I mean, it was really strange. So that started happening a lot. Then things started happening in our bedroom. And it was one thing that started happening quite often. And I'm going to show it to you. I have a jewelry box over there. I guess it was when I got the jewelry box. Now that I'm thinking of it, I didn't have that jewelry box the whole time.
Yeah.
But I'd had it for a while. And this started to happen where it has 4 drawers. And the drawers would be pulled out in a pattern.
Wow.
So I'd leave the bedroom and I'll show it to you.
Please do.
And I remember a friend of mine saying, what do we think the message is here? Okay. So do you see this? Do you see it here?
Oh, yeah. For the benefit of the listener, what we're looking at is a lovely, it looks like wooden effect or maybe wood.
Yeah.
It's like a fantastic looking, looks like an old English red pillar box, but it's actually brown wood 4 or 3 or 4 drawers.
4 drawers.
4 drawers of equal size. Imagine that going down the side of a red pillar box, but smaller for jewelry. Okay, go on.
Okay. So I'd leave the room and I'd come back an hour later and the drawers would be pulled out like this.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can see that. And again, for the guys, imagine it going down like a staircase. So the top drawers out a bit, the next one out even more. All 4 drawers a little bit further out each time.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So I remember the first few times it happened, and we were nowhere near a road. There was no vibrations. We didn't have earthquakes. I mean, there was nothing going on that would have caused that. There was nothing else moved in our. There was nothing else moved in the apartment. It would just be that, and it would happen quite often. I would say, like, once every 10 days or so.
Wow.
It would
and like you've just seen there, that like you've just said, it wasn't an earthquake or anything like that, because from looking at that, vibrations alone wouldn't open. You could have to give it a good shake for a drawer to open, and I mean a shake that would move other things on that unit or around your house.
Right, exactly. Because I had other things up on there. There would be it actually wasn't that. It was a different dresser we had, but it was the same kind of setup. Like there were a couple things that we had up on it. So that started happening quite regularly, and and it never happened in front of me. See, this is the thing; it never happened in front of me.
Right.
It would be I'd leave the room, or I'd go out and I'd come back, and this would happen. Yeah. Then before we ended up taking the other apartment upstairs, something else that was really interesting happened down there. And it was, we had a cat. It was my first cat. I never thought I would have a cat.
Yeah.
We had taken him in. We found him. It was this adorable tuxedo cat, and he was wonderful. And it turned out he was much older than we thought, and he died. We had him about 2 years. And I was bereft. Yeah. Well, then within 3 weeks, we ended up getting another tuxedo cat that was outside in a large litter, and he was adorable. And my husband came in one day and he said, that little black and white cat looks like he's been through it. There had been a terrible storm.
Yeah.
So we went out and we got him, we took him in, and we nursed him back to health, but he still breathed really strangely. And it turned out he had a diaphragmatic hernia. So He had to get an operation. Yeah. So that was, we bought the cat.
Oh, Christ.
It cost $2,000 right away.
Oh, my God.
The
The little bastard. Honest to
yeah.
God.
Yeah. So while he was getting the operation,
Yeah.
he was gone, he was in the hospital for the day, and I was so nervous. I was so worried.
Oh.
But the previous 2 days, my husband and I in that area both thought we saw a cat. And we're
Wow.
like, Kingsley, our first cat, but he
Yeah.
thought, because I saw my husband turn and he said, I thought I saw a cat there. I said, I had that happen also, but it was the same area. That's
Weird.
It was the same area. So anyway, I thought, okay, let me do some yoga. I'm really big into yoga. And I thought, let me do some yoga while he's getting the operation. This was summertime, actually. It was really warm outside, and I can't stand the heat. I always have the air conditioner on. But when I would do yoga, I would go turn the thermostat up so it was like 72 degrees as opposed to
like a hot yoga sort of thing.
Right.
Bikram
Well, hot
yoga.
for me.
Yeah.
Normally it'd be 68, but the 72 is not very hot at all. I would just turn it up a little bit so that the air conditioning didn't blow on me.
I see.
So I went over and I did this, and it was a little unit, it was a little box that it moved horizontally. It did not move vertically. So the little lever was horizontal. It was very, very tight. It did not move easily. You would have to really move it.
Yeah.
So I walked over, I put it on 72 degrees. I went and I sat down. I started doing yoga. About half an hour into it, I was freezing cold.
Yeah.
So I got up and I went over, and it was turned all the way down to the minimum, like I'm 56 or something. It was. And bizarrely, with everything that happened down there, that was the thing that got me panicked the most.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because it was like, I'm sitting here, the thermostat is right over there, like 2 yards from me.
Yeah.
And something came and did this.
Yeah, no, I can completely understand why that would be the. I've just got a shiver thinking about it, because you're talking about you not necessarily being in a vulnerable situation, but you're on your own in a room, and something must be in that room and amending something within your environment physically.
Right.
And that for me is a lot scarier than seeing a mist or a corner of the eye thing. That's something that can do have physical change in your immediate environment, which is terrifying.
Right, which I guess is similar to the drawers. If you could pull those drawers out, you could do that. I hadn't even thought about that. But if you could pull those drawers out, you could go do that. And I mean, my heart was racing. I called Patrick and I said, listen to what happened. And he was like, I believe you. And, just calm down. And then after I calmed down, I said, maybe it was something trying to tell me that, you're not alone. This cat's going to be okay. Because I was so nervous about the cat. I kind of saw it as a positive thing. Yeah. So I think that was the last thing I really remember happening down there. But then my daughter came along in 2004, and we ended up, I was somebody who never wanted to leave the apartment, interestingly. New Jersey has sky-high property taxes, and we had a lot of space in that apartment for less than most people pay in a year for their property taxes.
Wow.
We always wanted to travel. We traveled. We would go to Europe. We would do all sorts. We did whatever we wanted because we weren't, tied down to a house that was taking all of our money. So I still didn't want to leave there because everything was so expensive, and I knew a house was going to be a money pit. And by the way, I'm right. I have a house now, and I can tell you it's a money pit.
Amazing.
Yeah, but I said, if the guy upstairs moves, we had a few different neighbors upstairs.
Yeah,
but there was a guy up there at one point, and I had a feeling he wasn't going to last very long. I think his mom was paying for the rent.
Right. Okay.
And he moved out. Or he told me he was going to move out. So I called management and I said, could we take that upstairs apartment? And they said, sure. Yeah. So we took the upstairs apartment, and that was, let me see, that was in 2005. We took the second apartment in 2005.
Yeah.
Now, for everything that went on downstairs, I could tell you upstairs, so much more happened.
Really?
So much more. And I never saw a full body apparition up there, but there was a lot more movement upstairs.
Wow.
And that was where I actually got scared. So no black masses, no mist, nothing like that.
Yeah.
But when we moved upstairs, we had the one bedroom we used for my daughter. The living room, the big living room, is what we used as our bedroom. And then I used the dining area as my yoga area, and the kitchen I put a sewing machine up in because I'd started to learn to sew at that point. So we had a lot of space up there. So we moved all of our bedroom stuff up there. And I can tell you that the jewelry box thing became almost daily up there.
Wow.
It was just constant. And again, I never saw it happen. But it just happened all the time. So lots of little things would happen, like things would move. I'd come in and the lights would be off. I'd come up from downstairs, lights would be off, and I'm sure I left them on. One time actually, the thing that bothered me the most, and again, I don't know why, but the thing that bothered me a lot was there was a walk-in closet in the living room area, which was our bedroom. We had our clothes in there. That door would open all the time on its own.
You would see that open, or
no, it would be when I was out of the room.
Yeah,
or sleeping. We'd go to sleep.
Oh God, no way.
Yes, that's
it. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I am terrified if I leave a room. Well, if I was to leave a room, like you've just said, come back in and a door's open that I know it's closed. That's one thing. If I close a door shut, then go to sleep and wake up the next morning and that door's open, that's a lot scarier for me, because what else has gone on in the night?
Right. And there was nothing wrong with the door. The door was fine. It was not one of those doors that, could easily open. I mean, you had to actually turn the knob and open it. Yeah. There was nothing wrong with the door. We checked many, many times. And, when you're checking like this, it almost feels like you're becoming foolish for checking so much. Like, okay, I see that the door's fine. Nothing can open. I'm going to check this 90 times, but it would do it, and it would do it a lot. And it really bothered me. And it would often happen during the night where we'd wake up and it was open.
Wow.
And one time, actually, I distinctly remember this. It was really interesting. One time, my husband got up. He was up and he was going to work. And we woke up. Or I was like half awake, and I said to him, "Is the door open?" Because I didn't even want to open my eyes to see it open. I said, "Is the door open?" And he said, "No, it's not." So I said, "Oh, good." So my daughter was still asleep. He left. He went out to work, and I went back to sleep. I'm not a morning person, so I'll sleep.
Right.
Until noon. So I went back to sleep, and it was actually odd because when I went back to sleep, I got the sensation, the sensation of a cat jumping up on your bed and kind of.
Yes, I am fully aware of that. I wasn't until about a year ago, but now I'm completely aware of that.
Yeah. Well, I had that sensation, and it was funny because I just assumed he was upstairs with us, but he usually didn't come upstairs. And I realized when I woke up, he was not upstairs. He was downstairs the whole time. And we had doors because it was a different apartment.
Yeah.
The front door was closed. So he was downstairs the whole time. So I just had that sensation, and it was odd. But I went to sleep, and when I woke up, the door was open.
Oh, God.
So
that's horrible. That is horrible.
Like an hour later, the door opened. And, I woke up, it was open, and it really, really bothered me. And then around this time, there was not a lot going on downstairs. But one morning, I think it was 05 or early 06. Our dog freaked out. And Patrick said to me, he's spooked again. I said, yeah, I see that. He seemed really, because his tail would be down. He was still eating and everything in the kitchen, but you could tell he was not right. He was nervous.
Yeah, a little bit off.
So at that time, my daughter, I was toilet training her.
Yeah.
And we'd go into the bathroom. This is downstairs now.
Right.
So we'd go into the bathroom, and what we would do is, you'd put her on the toilet and you'd stand there and wait forever. And I always kept the door open because nobody was out there. It was, just us in there.
Yeah.
The door would be open, and, I'd kind of stand by the door waiting for her. And she was not speaking all that much at that. I guess she was like 2.5, 3. She wasn't speaking all that much. But she said to me, "Close the door. There's people out there."
Oh, what? I tell you what, I'd need to use the toilet. That's petrifying.
It only worried me because our dog had freaked out that morning.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah." And she wasn't scared, though. She said, "Close the door. There's people out there."
Oh.
So I closed the door. We got off the toilet, and I said, "So you said there are people out there?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Could you show me where?" And she went over to the chair that,
Oh my God,
had jumped off of.
The dog had jumped off. Oh.
And I said, "What did they look like?" And she said, "Black and blue." And and that was it. She has no recollection of this. And she didn't do anything like that before. She wasn't one to have imaginary friends or make things up. That was the only time it ever happened. I had asked her a couple times what they looked like, and she would say black and blue. And I asked, was it one? And she said, no, 3.
Wow.
It was 3.
And that's quite specific, isn't it? It's not like if a child's just making up, they'd say, no, there was loads.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say there was 3. 3's a definite number.
Yeah. And one thing that actually struck me when she said black and blue, have you ever heard of ghosts that appear as a photographic negative?
I've not.
I have
Unbelievably, no. That's amazing.
I think it's in one of my Haunted England books, or I have a book, Haunted Britain. And I think there was a place, maybe it's up in Scotland, where it said that there's a female ghost that appears as a photographic negative.
Amazing. I've not heard of that. And I'm going to look it up as soon as we finish. That's amazing.
I remember it because it freaked me out for some reason. That really.
Yeah, that is terrifying. It is terrifying.
And it would appear in a mirror because mirrors.
Oh, God, oh, my. That's, there's that simple, and it appeared in a mirror. No, just got to shiver down my spine. Stay out of mirrors. Oh, my God.
And I think there's some theory about why it would appear as a photographic negative. But I did hear somebody say something on your show, I think, that kids see the energy of, and they see it in colors.
No, that might have been me when I was a child. Me and my mate used to we used to be able to see auras, and we would say, like, we could touch fingers and see the aura coming off from me to him and vice versa. But he kind of poo-poos that memory now, whereas I'm like, no, we used to be able to do it. But
yeah. So that type of thing never happened before or since. But then upstairs we had an instance one night where after our dog died, which was horrendous, the worst thing that ever happened to me.
I can imagine. Oh.
A few months later we got another dog who was also a border collie mix, and she's still with us. She was very, very exuberant when she was greeting people. And we had a couple of friends over for dinner one night, and we said, you know what, let's just put her upstairs because she'll just be all over you, all night.
Yeah.
So while we were eating, we put her upstairs. And I guess, it was my husband put her upstairs, actually. And a little while later, I guess after we had dinner, he said, I'm going to go up and take her out. So he comes down all annoyed, and he said to me, why did you turn off the light and lock the door on Kylie?
Oh.
I said, I've been down here the whole time.
Oh, my God.
And he looked like, oh, my God. His eyes got really wide. Because we would not lock that door at all, because we would, go back and forth. The only time we locked the door is if we were leaving to actually go somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, he said he made sure he left the light on for her, and of course he wouldn't have locked the door,
No.
but he had to come
Wow.
and get the key to lock the door. So this is a place, where the door's opening all the time and the jewelry box is
Do you think that like that the upper floor may have been the focal point, and anything you experienced on the floor below was kind of the residual part of that?
I don't know, see, because what I saw below was the full body apparition.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. Good
We
point.
actually saw things down there. But see, another thing happened when we moved. I think it was right when we took that second apartment. I bought a sewing machine that was from the 1970s. It's, one of these, workhorse sewing machines that people have, a
Yeah.
lot of time. And I guess it was an estate sale. I got it on eBay, but I saw in the little direction booklet where they showed you different stitches, the woman who had it made notes. And it looked like
Oh,
an older woman. So it was probably an
oh,
older woman
bless.
who got it in the 70s and who is now
Yeah.
and we had a lot of weird things go on with that. And we still do actually in our house, where if we don't take it out for a while and then we go to take it out, we have problems where we can't open the box and we try and try and try. And then by the time we give up, let's say, okay, one more time, it will just open very easily. And I
Yeah.
had
Wow.
seen this, there was a show here, maybe you've seen it, called Haunted Collector. And it's
I think so.
about energy attaching itself to objects, beloved
Yeah.
objects
Yeah.
in some way. So I'd wondered, was that something else that we brought in? But the thing that didn't change was the jewelry box, the way
That's
the jewelry
fascinating.
box would open. So here was okay. So one day, I was upstairs and I wanted to vacuum, and it was hardwood floors. It was not difficult to vacuum at all. And well, first I dusted, and I had arranged things on our dresser, after I dusted them and the way they usually were arranged. So I did that.
Hmm.
And then I went and I vacuumed. The vacuum was on maybe 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. It was not a big area to vacuum. It was like 19 by 13, but
Yeah.
unimpeded with only a bed. It was quite easy to vacuum. So I vacuumed. I turned around and everything was rearranged on the dresser.
Wow.
And that really scared me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
again, I was there. I didn't see it happen. When I turned around, things had all been moved.
Wow. And you didn't hear a single noise. Well, I mean, I suppose you vacuum.
No,
Was the vacuum on at the time?
Yes, the vacuum
Right.
was on.
Okay.
So I dusted, I arranged, I vacuumed, vacuumed all the floor, turned around, and this had happened.
Wow. And was it, for argument's sake, was it an actual rearrangement, or was it, for example, 4 things had moved? Do you know what I mean? It's like things
It was a rearrangement because one thing was on the other side of the dresser.
Wow. That's impressive.
So it had moved like that far,
Yeah. Wow.
a foot and a half. So no, it wasn't like it was a little vibration. And again, I vacuumed all the time up there. This didn't happen.
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah.
This was one time this happened. So things were moved around, very significantly moved around. So I got that really scared me. And I told a friend of mine about this, who, she was into this stuff too. And she said to me, you know what? You really have to have a talk. You really need to go up there and have a talk.
As in to the spirit.
Yes. Just
wow.
When we first moved into the apartment, you didn't have these shows on TV. By the time we took the upstairs apartment, Ghost Hunters was on.
I see,
in
right.
the US.
Okay.
So you would see more of that, go, there's nothing wrong with these spirits. Just go tell them this is your spirit.
Yeah.
She said to me, just go up and say, look, I don't mind just sharing the space. Just don't scare the hell out of me.
Right.
So I said, okay.
All well and good in principle when you're not the one having to do it, but.
Right. So I went upstairs. It was just me. And I said just that. I actually said what you said verbatim. I said, a lot's going on here. It's really making me nervous. I don't mind you sharing the space. Just please don't scare the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it all stopped.
Really?
all of it.
Oh
And
my
we were
God.
there like another 2 years, I think.
That's
And
amazing.
it didn't happen again. The door didn't open. The jewelry box was fine. Nothing went on, up or down.
And that's from going from the jewelry box being more or less daily as a
Yes.
daily occurrence.
Yes.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. And it's funny because you do hear people say, oh, I had the talk and it all calmed down. Nothing else happened after that.
Wow.
And in a way, in a sick way, I almost sort of missed it. I think Lainey and Ben were talking about that because Lainey was saying you have affection for the
Yeah.
So in a way I sort of missed it, but then I felt like, okay, so it really didn't want to scare me. It was just looking for attention.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to our house, I felt, I don't know, this is going to sound really crazy, but I felt like, oh, I don't really want to leave the ghosts, plural, whatever it is. It just felt strange because it had been kind of part of my life for so long.
Yeah. And I suppose it intertwined with the memories you've got of the place as well.
Yes. And by that time we had our second daughter, and it was 2010. We decided to move to this house, not far away at all. And I was the last one in there. And I said, you can come if you want.
Oh, well, of all the things to say, oh my God.
And I will tell you this. Since we've been in this house, that jewelry box, the drawers have opened 2 or 3 times like that.
No way. Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's it. Yeah. And
so you think it could be there? It could, whatever it was, it could have come along, do you think? Do you think there's a chance it has?
Maybe, because, that
it had an invite.
Yeah.
You may as well have cut at the door key, honest to God.
That happened with the jewelry box. Yeah, it was really, really strange. We had one other incident that happened here. We were doing some work on this house before we actually moved in. And the previous owners, we had met the previous owners. The woman raised her kids here, and her husband had died, lived and died here with her.
Yeah.
And my husband said, he was the one doing all the work. I was in the apartment doing all the work. And he said he used to feel kind of a presence in here when he was working. So he told the woman who sold it to us, and she totally believed it. But the one weird thing that happened was we had to get a whole new air conditioning and heating system in here. And the air conditioner that we replaced was the original from 1964. And the guys who came to take it away were saying, wow, this is the last one in the neighborhood. We've replaced all of these over the years. Yeah. This is the last one. And it was a big thing to have central air conditioning at that time. Yeah. And the day this was happening, the day they took that out and they were putting in new air conditioning, I was in the shower and the light went off in the bathroom here.
Yeah.
I was in the shower. And again, it's a light you really have to switch to turn it on and off. There's no in between. And I got out of the shower and I was calling for my husband and I said, what's going on with the lights? And he said, what do you mean what's going on with the lights? And I said, the lights off in the bathroom. None of the other lights had gone out. And he went to the fuse box and nothing had tripped or anything. And we just went back into the bathroom and turned the light on. So it was almost like something turned that off while I was in the shower. And that was the only thing that ever happened. And he said, I wonder if it's Dorothy's husband or something upset that we were replacing his air conditioner. That he was probably so proud of. But nothing else has happened in here. I mean, I suppose there could always be little things that you don't notice. 4 people and a dog and a cat living in a house. But just the jewelry box 2 or 3 times since we've been here. That's it.
It's so interesting though that you said you can come with us. It's I've never ever spoke to someone who's had a haunting in an apartment or a house, and when they've left, they've went, by the way, We have a spare room if you want to come along. It just seems like it's very brave. I just couldn't have done that.
I almost felt guilty leaving it. But the place is very close to us, and I'll drive by there once in a while. I'll drive, pull in, and I sometimes want to knock on the door and ask.
I was just about to ask, do you know who lives there now? And are you aware if they've seen anything or heard anything?
No, nothing. And it would have been several people, but I would have to actually stop and ask. And, you won't want to scare the hell out of somebody who's living there quite peacefully.
Yeah.
But again, it was nothing bad. Like I said, the thing that really, really bothered me was the door.
Yeah. But anything physical, I think, is like I've mentioned it on the show about the tap going on with me and Becca, because it was something that we both physically witnessed it moving, coming down and turning on, the tap in the kitchen. And I was made up at first to spend a full day in absolute joy of like, I'm made up that you've seen this. This is amazing, fantastic. But then the more I dwelt on it, it became I completely went 180 on it. I was just thinking I don't feel comfortable that there's something in this very relatively small apartment, really, that has the power to manipulate physical objects without any knowledge or agreement from me. It just became a little bit more intimidating just with that thought. I've just freaked myself out by saying that now. It's nearly midnight, but anyway. So yeah, no, Alice, I need to say, Alison, thank you very much. I've never had such a concise series of events in a chronological order that I've literally went in my mind on that journey with you. I've got all that in my head now, and I'm being genuinely serious when I say I am literally going to finish this call and go to bed. And I will say Becca's been asleep now for about an hour and a half. So I'm going to be alone downstairs. I'm going to have to sleep with my headphones on and listen to a podcast or something, because I'm going to be panicking tonight, because that's been absolutely awesome. Sincerely, thank you. If anything does go on in the house, you think of any more memories, or you find out more about the building or the history of the place, you'll have to come back on and let us know.
Yeah, I will. I am going to look a little more into that land. I think there should be some information at the library about what was there. But it's like my husband had said, if we had all these Irish immigrants working on this canal, it was 1830 to 1834. I don't know what year that part was built, because it was Delaware and Raritan. It was a long canal. But you kind of wonder if that, somehow made an imprint on the land.
Yeah, and you'd often find as well, like even if it was formerly farmland, you often find that dwellings tend to be built on the site of at least where there was a barn or there was something. So it's normally not just, they don't just pick a spot in an open field and say let's build there. There's normally it's from some sort of settlement, isn't it? So so it'll be really interesting if you find anything out at all. Be sure to let us know.
I will tell you this. I was interested in your discussion that you had on haunted workplaces with someone recently on the podcast, and the place where, actually now I'm starting to think, who knows, maybe this actually came from there. The place where my husband and I also worked on Rutgers campus was a early 19th century mansion. It was beautiful. The place was beautiful. And our dog would not go into the basement there. As soon as we got to the top of the steps, he would just stop, because we would bring him in a lot. He would just stop, and it was almost like a cartoon, how like a cartoon dog stop. Yeah, he would just stop and never go down into that basement. And quite a few people reported things in that house. They had used the upstairs for grad students who who needed the computer or wanted to work in there. And there were some that would not go into the house because of experiences they had. One said that he had, that there was like the old box radios, like for the 80s radios with the tape.
Yes, like a ghetto blaster, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
They had one of those in one of these offices, and a guy said he was working in there one day alone, and the radio kept going on, and he'd walk in and turn it off. And this happened 2 or 3 times. And then finally he unpulled the plug. He pulled the plug out of the wall, and he heard the radio again.
Oh no!
And
Time to
he
leave.
would go back in
Bloody
there after
hell.
that. And then our boss said it was a very grand staircase that had that you could go up on either side.
I like the sound of that. Yeah.
You could go up on either side because you had the main entrance hall, and then the staircase would lead up to one stair on after the landing.
Yeah.
And our boss said that she was working there alone one weekend, and she felt and heard like the rustling of taffeta on the steps next to
taffeta. What's I'm unaware of that word.
Like a thick silk dress, like for a ball gown. Yeah, because they still, they had parties and stuff in there.
Yeah.
And there was a caterer who worked there. The guy who did all the catering. We sort of had like on-site catering because they would hold events there.
Yeah.
He said that one day he like briefly almost went back in time where he heard people arriving and heard horses and carriages.
Wow. That's amazing.
But I never had any experiences in there, nor did my husband.
Yeah.
And we were in there a lot, but a lot of people did report things. A lot of people did report things there.
And what was that building again? Just so anyone who's interested can try and have a little look it up.
You want me to tell you?
No, sorry. The one you just mentioned there, the mansion, the former mansion.
It's called Woodlawn.
Oh, okay.
It's on Rutgers University campus, and it holds various institutes. The Eagleton Institute of Politics it's now in an outbuilding there, but it's there's a women's institute there, and various entities, if you will, that are part of Rutgers University have that.
I do. I love lovely old, but I'm really big on the architecture for some reason. I couldn't tell you anything. Like I say, I'm up on the architecture. If anybody mentioned any architectural term, I wouldn't know what they meant. I just mean I really like looking at really nice buildings. Is what I mean.
Yeah. It's pretty, and it was really nice working there. I never got a bad feeling in there either, but a lot of people had strange things happen.
That's fascinating.
Students seem to be the ones who are most freaked out by it.
Yeah, but I mean, I always take up student stuff with a bit of a pinch of salt because, as we all know, there's a good chance if I was listening to the conversation we just had when I was a teenager, and not only would I not be sleeping tonight, I'd be calling probably the parish priest in the morning and being like, "You need to come round and bless me bedroom because I'm terrified." So I think you need to get over the hill of absolute belief in everything to come down on the side of, I don't know, maybe I'm just patronizing people of a teenage age. I don't know.
So they were grad students, so they were generally in their 20s. Yeah, they were grad students. It wasn't kids.
Okay, well that's different then, I suppose.
Yeah, it was grad students who had the kind of upstairs part of it were used for people who I think they were called fellows. They were people who had special scholarships that were part of this. I think I don't know if they still do it, if they still have it there, but yeah, there were some people who were really freaked out.
I'm sure they were. Well, Alison, you've certainly freaked me out tonight, and hopefully all of our listeners too. I've been sincere when I say you've left me with some. I love it when I have a conversation with somebody, obviously about ghosts, because that's the point of the show. But when they leave me with such a visceral image, or in your case, several visceral images in my head that I know I'm going to battle with to get rid of tonight before I fall asleep. So that's the point of the show. So hopefully everyone else who's listening is doing the same. So thank you for entertaining and scaring us silly. And as I said earlier, if anything else takes place, immediately get in touch and we'll have an update.
Thanks. And if you have any other theories about this, let me know as well, because I still go back and forth. Was it one thing? Was it many? And
if anyone's listening and has a theory, email into the show and I'll make sure to forward it on to you, Alison. And same goes if you've got any ideas on the military regalia that you refer, and if they think I know what that is immediately from you mentioning it, get in touch, contact at talkaboutghosts.com, and I'll forward it on to Alison, and we'll try and build a better picture of what we already know.
Okay, Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alison. This has been an absolute pleasure. You've been a great guest, and we'll have to get you back on at some point in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
And there we have it. The biggest episode we have ever produced. 2.5 hours worth of paranormal spook. Wow. Now, I know there will be people listening who think that was just too much. It was too much. I listen to other podcasts, Kev. I'm not going to take up 2.5 hours out of my day to listen to you, and I appreciate that. I do sincerely. But what I was thinking is you could maybe pause it, come back to it. There are a lot of people who say, oh, I wish you could have more than one episode per week. So maybe in this instance, you could just pause it, come back to it when you want. I don't know. Is it too long? Let me know. But I'm not going to apologise for the wonderful just hit me microphone. I'm not going to apologise for the wonderful content by our two wonderful guests. So big thank you. Fucking hell, Kevin. Stop using your hands to speak. You're not an orator. You're simply a podcaster. Big thank you to our two wonderful guests there. You really made the show spectacular and terrifying too. I think we can all agree. Don't forget, guys, if for some reason this wasn't enough, you can go and sign over to our Patreon at patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. Every little helps to keep the show going at the minute. Just to use a common UK supermarket slogan, every little helps, but it does. And today's show, it's about half an hour of me and Becca, as I say, going around trying to find this secret plaque in Liverpool city centre that we done yesterday on our daily allocated exercise time. Stupid, but it was. And you hear my voice going throughout, which is interesting. It seems to have withheld and upheld itself during this podcast, which, touch wood, I'm very grateful for. But yeah, in the meantime and in between time, guys, I will speak to you. We won't be doing a don't through this week, which is okay. You've got 2.5 hours worth of content here. So I'll speak to you on Sunday, of course, next week, for next week's show. Okay, you wonderful, beautiful, dare I say, amazing people. I will speak to you then. Till then, take care of yourselves and each other. Jerry Springer, circa 1990s copyright. Okay, bye-bye now.